Councilmember Ingstrom.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Sackler.
Here.
Councilmember Redmond.
Here.
Councilmember Collins.
Here.
Mayor Wagner.
Here. And for interest of time, I wish to waive the flag salute if no one's opposed. We'll do that with the council meeting. And so introductions, the first is Sandra Hogan. I don't see her in the audience. Can we appoint? Okay, so we'll go next to Ted Marconi, who's applying for the Liberty Tax Advisory Committee. Do you have some words for us? Would you please speak to the microphone and tell us, I know you had an application, and obviously in the application you said why you're applying, but you want to repeat to us why you're interested in joining the committee?
Well, I'm just interested because I've had a long history with the library. My father, my aunt actually spearheaded the drive to get the library building built in the first place, but the real reason I'm here is because a couple members of the Friends of the Library asked that there was going to be a vacancy and asked me if I'd stand in and bring my perspective to the thing. So okay. If you are interested in that, I'd be happy to serve.
Yes, I am interested in your perspective. You want to talk about that first, or would you like to entertain some questions?
Questions are fine.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for Ted?
Yeah, hi Ted. Are you taking anybody's place on LTAC, or are you just...
Dean Wittstein.
Okay. You must know Dennis.
Dennis Johnson?
Yeah.
Yes.
Work fine with him?
Yes. We've been on a board before, and I actually worked with him when I was with the city to help set up the library tax and the Library Tax Advisory Commission in the first place. So.
Right. I'm done.
Any other questions for Ted? No? So Ted, give me your perspective. Have you been up to date with, are you up to date with the library expansion project and all that's going on with the library?
Well, no, I wouldn't say I'm completely up to date. The last I heard was that we were in the design stage and you were looking at engineering designs and stuff, and that's really the last I've been aware of, that somehow that got put off, or it's just beginning to become ready to be delivered to the city. So.
Okay. And where are you on library governance?
On library governance, I really don't have a whole lot of say about that. I mean, my understanding of the role is to be able to advise you on spending the taxpayers' money the wisest way possible. So in as much as spending money affects library governance, then I would be happy to weigh in on that, but other than that, I don't have, I think library governance is up to you and the Friends of the Library and the county.
Right, that's correct. Anything else you want to share? You want to share your perspective?
Well, I mean, basically my perspective, since I left the city, most of my work has been with the museum, and I kind of have the feeling that the museum and the library have sort of complementary and similar roles in preserving the culture of the community. So that's something I have a great interest in seeing being preserved and enhanced. So.
Great. All right. Anybody like to entertain a motion?
Yeah, I'm move to approve Ted Marconi's placement on the Library Tax Advisory Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Next we have Glenn Mix, who's applying for the Active Transportation Committee. Would you like to come up and introduce yourself to us, Glenn?
Yeah, my name is Glenn Mix, as you know. I live in North Mount Shasta. I've lived here about 3 years. I moved up from the Bay Area. There I worked as a transportation manager for Rossmore, which is a retirement community of around 9,400 residents. Worked there for 30 years. Took over the fleet maintenance about 20 years ago. When I took it over, their annual budget was around $650,000. My last year there, the budget was $570,000. 20 years later, running cheaper. So I do know how to pinch a nickel till it screams. I don't know what else you want to know.
Does anybody have any questions for Glenn? Anybody from the panel, the council?
I have a question. So, the Active Transportation Committee has had some turmoil, and there's some question as to what the main goals should be. Do you have any strong feelings about projects or goals that you'd like to see accomplished?
Honestly, no. I'm not that familiar with it. I saw the ad in the paper. One of my first question here was, is this committee newly forming, reforming, reorganizing? Because I saw the resolution for reducing the number of members, but I didn't know if it was a pre-existing committee or not. I truly don't know anything about it, so it'll be a learning experience if I'm there.
I can answer that. I think we have a little bit of time. I can say I was on the Active Transportation Committee for a while, and we needed 4 members, I think, or 3 to have a quorum, because it was a 5-member committee before. The history was 7-member.
Correct.
And then I think we were operating at under 5, but you're saying it was 7 all along?
So now we've reduced the membership. Will be a
so
three-member quorum.
For the 7-member committee, we needed a 4 members for a quorum. When the terms that were ended for 3 of the 5, I thought we were a 5-member committee. We were 7, really?
It was supposed to be 7. But
Supposed to be 7.
It was never officially reduced to 5 until recently.
But I think we were operating under 5.
Correct.
We were operating under 5, and when the term limits came up for 2 of them, 2 or 3 of them, they opted not to renew. So we suddenly had only 1 member left out of the 5.
At least if he shows up, it's a quorum, right?
Yeah, we lost quorum basically, and we haven't really been meeting for about a year now, I think. It's close to a year we haven't been meeting. So we'd love for you to join, at least I would love for you to join the Active Transportation Committee, and maybe your first assignment might be to see if you can find some more people to join as well.
Okay, well, I don't have experience in recruiting, but
You can always branch out and do something new, right?
I guess, yeah.
So yeah, are there any other questions? Does that sort of answer your question?
Oh, that answered that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think as far as the issue with active transportation, my experience is that many of the members on the committee had their pet projects, so each one had a different goal to try to accomplish, and I felt that we had a little bit difficulty getting on the same page and getting our minds onto a single project to focus on and to move forward with. It seems like people had their pet projects, and we were sort of divided, and it was a little bit frustrating. And one person actually had difficulty with the Brown Act itself and operating under the Brown Act. So there were those types of issues were happening. Just more information for you. Any other questions for Glenn?
Move to approve Glenn Mix to the Active Transportation Committee.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Objections? Abstentions? Motion passes.
So is this a committee of one?
There's one other person, Ken Ryan's still on, right?
Mr. Ryan's still a
Mr.
member.
Ryan is still on, so there's 2 of you now.
Oh, good.
And reduced to 5 members, that means 3 you have a quorum, you can start going again. So you just need 1 more member.
Okay.
Okay.
Congratulations.
I see Sandra Hogan still not here. Can we nominate her without an interview? Can I entertain a motion for Sandra? Or do we wait? You want to wait and do Tim first?
There she is.
Give her a chance. There she is. You're right on. There you are, girl. We're ready for you. Yeah. Okay.
I'm Sandra Haugen. Most of you know me. And I am here because I am re-upping my position on, I'd like to re-up my position on DIAC, Downtown Enhancement. So I've been on it for 4 years, I believe. And they told me that in order to re-up, I needed to come and see all of your smiling faces. So,
Okay. And can you tell us what business you're associated with in case some of us don't know?
yeah, I own Elite Real Estate in Mount Shasta and Elite Property Management. I've been downtown for, I think, 3.5 years now.
And
So-
you're next to trading,
And I'm what?
what's the stores next to you so you can locate her?
Oh,
like-
I'm right next to the Thai restaurant and then the old tattoo parlor.
Yeah.
That is no longer
So you're
there.
between those two?
Correct.
Uh-huh.
Right. And I live in Mount Shasta now too. I just moved here in May. So, from Lake Shastina. But I love it. It gets me involved, and you know, there's a group of us that are responsible for the different events that have gone on, Winter Magic, all those different things, the chili cook-off. That was kind of our core group there. And so, as volunteers, we try and do a little more every year, and at least one big event to kind of get involvement. And it seems like it's going pretty well.
Cool. Well, thanks for reapplying. I really am excited to see what you're going to do next.
Okay.
Because I've seen some great events happen by DX. So,
Thank you.
are there any questions from council to Deborah? No, sorry, Sandra. Sandra. No.
Okay. Thank you.
And so, can I entertain a motion then?
Make a motion to re-elect Sandra?
Reappoint Sandra
Reappoint.
to the Downtown Enhancement Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, Tim Stearns, welcome back to City Council. Yeah. Any resolutions for the new year for you?
Get back in shape.
Okay.
Isn't that the
physical,
most
getting-
popular resolution?
Oh, yeah. Go join the gym again. Join the gym.
I went running for the last 2 days. My legs are sore.
Oh, cool. That's a good thing. All right, so tell me a little bit why you'd like to be a member of this committee and about your application and so
All
forth.
right, 2 committees.
Two.
2 committees.
Oh, yeah.
First one is DIAC.
Mm-hmm.
Most of you will remember that I used to be on DIAC, a committee member of DIAC, being a downtown business owner. I've had the pleasure of working with Sandra and Greg and would like to have that opportunity to continue working with them because I think that we can together do good things. The second committee I've asked to be appointed to is ATC, and we, or the City Council, recently, when we changed it from 7 down to 5, we also set forth the specific goals of ATC. So that should solve some of the issues that came up in the past. We can all we'll all know what we're working on and work on those goals together. And if the council appoints me, then we'll have 3 people on that committee and can actually start functioning.
Just wanted to share a little history of why Tim was on DIAC and was then no longer on DIAC. While in just the last couple of years, the council decided that city council members really didn't need to actually sit on a seat for a city committee. So we pulled the council members off of city committees only because we felt there was too much influence for those committees through the council members. We thought it was we wanted the citizens to be empowered to do what they wanted to do. And sometimes when a city official is in a meeting, some of the committee members turn to the official to look for guidance. And we wanted to kind of take some of that away from.
And now I'm just a citizen.
All right, any questions for Tim?
With respect to DEAC, I used to sit as the council liaison there in that committee for about a year. There were several key goals that were put forth and are still being worked on. What do you consider the first and maybe second most important goals for DEAC in the short term?
Well, I'd still like to see the mural on the retaining wall painted, completed. I would like to see us get some downtown entertainment at Parker Plaza. If I'm on that committee, I'd like to propose that I would contribute up to $250 out of my own pocket, if DEAC might do the same, to then get some students involved to do some of the things that we had talked about. For example, maybe find some other car clubs to invite to Mount Shasta, that sort of thing. And of course, one of the things that we're working on is the, what do you call it, downtown beautification or building enhancement. So that's another issue. There's some other issues as well, but
Yeah.
that's a good start, yeah?
Yes.
Okay.
We have a bit of controversy over your application because of what happened with the Planning Commission and the sharing of private information with that committee. So where do you stand on that?
Well, let me tell you what happened. I was contacted by two different individuals who indicated that they wanted to give input to the Planning Commission, but could not attend the December 18th meeting, and they didn't know how to contact the planning commissioners. So I gave them contact information for persons that I knew. Frankly, I didn't have contact information for all of them. They apparently contacted the planning commissioners and gave out the contact information to a whole lot of others who did the same. I understand that some of the planning commissioners felt like they got slammed with comment. From my perspective, Planning Commission is a very important committee. It, like City Council, deals with the public. I did suggest, after I gave those two individuals contact information, that it might be helpful if the city gave city email addresses to the planning commissioners so that concerned citizens have a way of contacting them. That would be one suggestion. Another suggestion, of course, would be adopt a policy that says no one contacts planning commissioners directly. Contact is only through the planner. In the last 20 years that I was on city council, the city didn't have, at least to my knowledge, such a policy.
Yeah, so every year at the beginning of the year, we get a sheet of all the contact information for city staff. And it says in bold print, this is not for public information, it's not for sharing. So there is an understood protocol that, that we're not really sharing people's personal information. Common courtesy says we at least ask the person if it's okay to share the information. I can understand from the planning's point of view that if they were bombarded, which sometimes this community can do if they're very passionate about a subject, they think that the more people that bombard a person, the more strength they have in their argument. It's not actually the case, but I think that there were some common courtesies ignored from many realms. One is from the public, who thinks that they can bombard a public official any time of the day or night. I think that's a lack of common courtesy. Also, there's lack of education if a citizen thinks that simply by having the numbers on their side, that's a big enough weight factor to strong arm a council member. That's also incorrect. We need a quality government. To have a quality government, we need to make quality decisions based on information, right? So
And different people have
I'm
different
not a planning commissioner. I don't know what they experienced. It sounded like they were quite upset because if a citizen citizen and a number of citizens give themselves permission to call planning commissioners and harass them every day and the night, okay, well that's the fault of the citizens, not respecting their representatives or who they think there are their representatives. We as council are their representatives. We're the ones they're supposed to be speaking to. So route the public to the right persons first, because ultimately the decision will come to council. Yes, you can attend a planning commission, and yes, you can send your comments in writing. You don't have to be present. So what I've done for people who said, well, I can't be present at the planning commission, I want to share my opinion, my default position is send it in writing, send it to the planning commission. She will put it in the packet if it gets it on time. Otherwise, you know, it'll be distributed at the meeting possibly. But basically, there is a format already in place. So imagine if you're a planning commissioner and you suddenly, even though your contact information had been private, it suddenly becomes public, and you're being bombarded with lots of calls. And maybe it's the fault of the planning commissioner if they can't set healthy boundaries and say, I'm sorry, bring your issue to the planning commission. I'm not taking calls. That's up to them. They have to set healthy boundaries for themselves too, right? So
Yeah, it may be beneficial that this thing did come up so that city council and or staff or planning commissioners can create a policy going forward. As to the 7 planning commissioners, I contacted 5 of them earlier this year after I got back from Christmas vacation. I did not have any contact information to contact the other 2. And 2 of them got back to me immediately and said, hey, I haven't heard anything about any objection to your being on ATC or DAC. And of course, I don't have any problem with that. I think it would be great. I apologized to Alan Pardee, who seemed to be upset because he had gotten apparently a lot of calls at his work. And one of the things he said is the reason he's on planning commission and not on city council is so that he doesn't have to deal with the public a lot. And I sent out email apologies to Melanie Finling and Belinda Hagera. Got an email back from Belinda saying she had no objection to my being on any committee. So, unfortunate situation, not something I anticipated was going to happen to them. Hopefully things can get resolved for the planning commissioners going forward.
So my question to you is, if you're not nominated to be on these committees, would you still participate in these committees as a non-member? Would you still?
Why would I not be? I've put in my application for the committees.
It was requested that we hold off and put table your application until there's a healing time for this. There's been quite a bit of upset.
Who's we? That all of us on the city council?
No. It's a council decision. I'm saying that it was proposed to us by the planning commission to consider tabling the application so that these processes can become clearer.
What I have heard is that Juliana expressed concern. I have heard back from 4 of the 7 planning commissioners expressly stating they have no problem with my being on either one of these two committees. Two of the planning commissioners I did not have any contact with, and did not give any contact information out for them in December because I didn't have their contact information. So that means that 4 out of the 5 people that I had given contact information out have said they don't have any problem with my being on these committees. All I hear, however, is that perhaps the city planner expressed a concern.
No, I'm not trying to say it's coming from a certain individual. I'm saying from the group. Granted, you want to argue that possibly the majority is not representative of that voice, but I'm saying any voice from that group. If there's a certain amount of upset that happened as a result, and you can imagine someone getting disrupted at work or someone getting a lot of calls on their private phone that they usually use for family members. Alan Pardee has said he's not wanting to be a council member that has to deal with the public, and their duty is to interface with the public. The planning commission is a different ball of wax.
I talked with Alan Pardee last week, and we've got that matter resolved.
Anyway, I just wanted to inform you, the council, that this is on the table, and certainly I'll entertain a motion. Or if you have more questions, let us know.
Well, yeah, we're
Oh, is there public comment on this? There's no public comment on this agenda.
Nobody can speak on the item. You can speak on any item.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, Greg Messer, Mount Shasta. I'm a member of the DIAC committee, and what I want to say is this, and I'm familiar with the incident, and I understand your comment about holding off on this. To be honest with you, I think if Tim could back up time, he wouldn't have done that. Okay, common sense says you wouldn't have done that, and he's apologized, and he's shown a certain amount of remorse. I think holding in abeyance his wish to be on this committee is not the right result for a punitive act. It has nothing to do with it. Tim has over 20 years of experience with this town. One of the things that being on the DIAC committee for a short period I've realized is we're doing things or starting to do things that I don't think have ever been done before. But you know what? I think they probably have, over and over. And the city probably made mistakes in doing them. We can learn so much from the history that he brings to the city, not only in process, but also in things that we've tried to do to renovate our downtown area. It would be really a mistake to hold off his memberships to this committee, especially for something, I'm not saying that's not important, on a punitive measure. And he didn't violate the Brown Act. He didn't violate a policy, not that there should have been. So I'm kind of in the middle on that whole issue. But we've definitely learned something. You've learned something, he's learned something, and all the committees have learned something. So I would just recommend that you nominate and approve his membership to DIAC.
I get that.
Barbara?
May I say a comment? Huh?
Yeah, not to him, may I speak now, because we're heading towards 5:30, and I just want
to say, in follow-up to that there was violation. So I'm saying to dismiss it is to dismiss it, and there was some hurt, right? And to ignore that is a violation also.
Well, I'm not saying dismiss it. I'm just saying it's no reason to hold up his application.
And there's no reason Tim can't be involved. He doesn't have to be a member to be involved. So.
I would have done exactly the same thing. I guarantee you, if members of the public had approached me and said, hey, we need your help to give input to a commission that I can't be at, they don't have public email addresses like we do, can you give me their contact information? I guarantee you I would have done the same thing. Bruce has since, because I went to talk to Bruce about it, he's since told me, no, wait, the policy is just send it to, you should have given just Juliana's email address and contact information. That's the policy. Well, I was on the council for 4 years and I didn't know. And he was on for 20 years and he didn't know. And as far as it being common courtesy, I think it's common courtesy that we work for the people. You know, that step one is we work for the people. If people want to give input, hey, here's how you do it. Can't be at the meeting, here's how you do it. Now, granted, yeah, he should have gone this way, but I would have done the exact same thing.
Well, I think we need to learn from our mistakes.
Well, I agree, now I know, but I don't find this much of a transgression relative to keeping somebody off a committee with regardless to who they are. I find it a small matter.
Ignorance is not, doesn't allow you to, you know, be not at fault in the legal judicial system. I'm looking for justice here. Someone feels like there was a crime that was committed, a crime's an exaggeration, but to find justice, we have avenues of communication in government that are supposed to be honored. That's what we've signed up for. If you can't get a small detail right, like how to be courteous when providing personal information out to the public, then how are you going to understand all the other rules that you're supposed to be operating under? If you can't understand one little rule.
If you're looking for an answer, because there wasn't one.
Right. Anyway, I don't think this is going to be solved here, so I will do what the committee chooses. I entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve Tim Stearns to the Downtown Enhancement Act Advisory Committee, and can I do both? Or it's one of both? And the Active Transportation Committee.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm opposed.
Opposed.
That's 3 in favor, 2 opposed. John and Barbara oppose. Any abstentions? No abstentions. And I think that's it for this meeting.
So the motion is approved.
Motion's approved, and we adjourn. And
Congratulations.
meeting to order. Let's have a roll call. Oh, it's flag salute first, and then roll call.
Councilmember Ingstrom? Here. Mayor Pro Tem Stackblatt?
Here.
Councilmember Redmond?
Here.
Councilmember Collins?
Here?
Mayor Wagner?
Here. Today we have a presentation by Maggie Shepard on Siskiyou against prescription addiction. And were you given 15 minutes, or how much time do you think you'll take? 17. Okay, do your best. Okay, thank you. You want to be sure you speak in the microphone because we're recording the session and we won't be able to pick up your voice unless you speak into it.
Is that okay? My name is Maggie Shepard and I'm the facilitator of Siskiyou County Opioid Safety Coalition, Sarah, Siskiyou Against RX Addiction, and I also manage Siskiyou County's area for the state's hub and spoke medication-assisted treatment grant through Aegis Treatment Centers. And so tonight I'm here to just give you an informational presentation about what's going on in the world of opioids in Siskiyou County, which unfortunately is pretty timely given what happened in Chico with the mass overdose event on Saturday. We're a coalition that was formed in October 2016, and we were initially funded by Partnership health plan. We're now currently funded by California Department of Public Health and through grant funding through Aegis Treatment Centers. And we're a subcommittee of the Siskiyou Healthcare Collaborative. We're part of a network of over 40 coalitions in the state of California that work closely together to reduce overdose and overdose deaths from opioids. And we do that through 3 ways. We work on safe prescribing practices. We're meeting with physicians to talk about safe prescribing guidelines and how to lower prescriptions. We are working mostly with law enforcement for Naloxone, Narcan distribution, which is a drug that reverses overdoses, and getting that distributed in the county. And we're also working on medication-assisted treatment, which is getting people with opioid use disorder into treatment with medications. So I'm going to give you a little data, I'm going to give you a little brain science, and I'm going to talk about medication-assisted treatment in 14 minutes or less. So since 1999, prescription drug opioid prescriptions have quadrupled in the United States. We have 5% of the population in America, but we consume over 88% of the opioids in the world, and we don't report having any more pain than anyone else in any other country. 115 Americans die every day from an overdose. When I started giving this talk 2 years ago, that number in that circle was 91. It's now 115. We have this kind of paradox going where all the data is going in the right direction, where prescriptions are going down, the dosages are going down, everything's going down except for the death rate, and that is largely due to the advent of fentanyl on the scene. Overdoses are now the leading cause of death for Americans under 50 years old. And now an American is now more likely to die of an opioid overdose than they are in a car accident as of last month. The deaths are really just the tip of the iceberg. For every death we have from an opioid, and when I talk about opioids, I'm talking about prescription pain pills and also heroin and fentanyl. So for every death we have 825 non-medical users, and that means a non-medical user is someone who is using someone else's prescription, or they're using a prescription for an intent different than what it was intended for, such as someone who got a prescription for wisdom teeth extraction who's using it to get high because they like the way it feels 6 months later. And so this is some data from the California Department of Public Health, their opioid surveillance dashboard. If you are a data person and want lots of data about opioids, go there because it's all there. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but basically I think anybody who works with data for Siskiyou County knows that you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, that because we have such small numbers, changes in those numbers really translate into big variations on the graph. So we look at trends, we look at multiple data points, but basically I can say that there's been huge gains in this county in terms of addressing this, in terms of decreasing the number of prescriptions, decreasing the dosages, and also a decrease in overdoses. So we still have twice the overdose rate as in the state of California. When we started 2 years ago, we were number 5 out of all counties in the state for opioid deaths, overdoses, and now I think we're somewhere between 9 and 12. So we're moving in the right direction there. The prescription rate is how many prescriptions per 1,000 residents. At one point we had 1.3 prescriptions for every resident in Siskiyou County, regardless of age. Now we're down to, well, as of 2017, which is about a little bit more than a year ago, we're down to about 500 per 1,000. So that's huge. It's still twice the state rate. And then we have the dosages. In Siskiyou County, people tended to be on much higher dosages than was normal. There's a very set dosages of opioids are measured in MMEs, morphine milli equivalents. And so everybody knows what morphine is. So how much, for instance, 100 MMEs of morphine is equal to 25 MMEs of Dilaudid. So we know that Dilaudid is 4 times stronger than morphine. So it gets translated into MMEs. And so anything over 90 MMEs is considered high risk for overdose and overdose death. And so we are still way up there, but at about 2.5 times the state rate. But again, a nice downward curve, especially in the state, but also for us. Okay, so the main take home that one of the things the coalition is trying to promote is that addiction is a complex, treatable illness. It's not a moral failing or a lack of discipline or poor willpower. It's a treatable, chronic, relapsing illness. And key points to understanding this, and Opioids are really big in the news right now, and they should be, because people are just dying at record rates. In fact, the life expectancy in the United States has actually dropped for the first time in decades in part because of this. The last time the life expectancy in the United States dropped was in the early 1900s, after World War I and the 1918 Spanish flu outbreak that killed millions of people. So it's pretty significant. So I like to look at this in the context of all addiction, not just opioid addiction. Obviously, methamphetamine is a huge problem here in the county. Alcohol is a huge problem. Marijuana is a problem. So opioids isn't the only drug on the block, and we can apply a lot of what's said to all. That's my hope, is that all addiction will be addressed. So key points is that there's a strong genetic component, somewhere between 50 and 70%. Does it mean if you have no family history of addiction that you're home free? No. Does it mean if you have a horrible family history that you're doomed to? No. But it's just something to be aware of. And that the neural restructuring that drives addiction is not under voluntary control. Drugs of abuse change your brain, they change how your brain looks and how it works. And that's not something you get to choose. If you're using those drugs, that's happening to your brain. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And the addicted brain is not a rational brain. If you've ever dealt with an addict, you know that. You say things like, what were they thinking? And the answer to that question is they weren't thinking, because addiction affects the part of the brain that controls executive function and judgment. And the most important take-home point, again, is opioid addiction is a treatable medical condition. And the thing is we're not treating it. If you think about it, somebody goes into the emergency room with a heart attack, they call out the troops, they do a huge evaluation, they do lab work, they admit you for observation, they put you in cardiac rehab. Somebody comes in with an opioid overdose, what do? They maybe they'll give them Narcan to reverse the overdose, and then kick them back out on the street. And we're not treating the illness. We are not treating the illness. No one ever got kicked out of treatment for diabetes because they cheated on their diet. But yet we routinely do that with addicts. Oh, you blew it out of here. And so there needs to be a huge shift in how we view addiction. And the shift needs to be towards as a treatable, relapsing medical illness condition. And the relapse rates for addiction is very similar to other diseases, diabetes, hypertension, and asthma, all around 50%. It's very rare to recover from drug abuse and not relapse. So here's your brain lesson for the week. Your brain has a part in the middle there called the reward center. It's part of the primitive brain, the limbic system. And you wonder what a reward has to do with, or pleasure has to do with drug abuse. Well, it has everything to do with drug abuse. Can you tell me what you love to do? Something that you look forward to doing? Golf. So when you are golfing or when you are thinking about golf, you are putting out little amounts of dopamine, right? And so, so dopamine is the neurotransmitter that is involved with feelings of pleasure and well-being. And so it's critical to survival. So what are two things that, he's not looking at me. What are two things that we need to do to survive on the planet as humanoids?
Food and water.
Huh?
Food and water.
Food and water, and what else? Air, right? And reproduction, right? If we don't reproduce, we don't survive on the planet as a species. So it really comes down to food and sex, and we all knew that already. But anyway, so it's no accident. It's really the brilliant design of nature that the two things that we need to survive are things that most people really enjoy. Because if you hated to eat, we wouldn't eat, and we would not be healthy as a population. We wouldn't survive. So it's not an accident. And so addiction is really a disruption of that dopamine system. Okay, and so dopamine is a little thing that helps ferry across messages across the space between our nerve cells. So like when you're golfing, you got dopamine flowing there, being ferried across.
Not if you saw my game lately.
So what is a drug really? A drug is a pleasure-producing chemical. That's all it is. And drugs of abuse are just drugs that produce pleasure. And so just to look very briefly at dopamine, on a normal day today, probably most of us put out around 50 nanograms per deciliter of dopamine. And on a bad day, it'd be around 40. For an addict, some days it can be 20, because addiction is a disruption of dopamine systems. And with circulating 20 nanograms per deciliter of dopamine, you don't even get out of bed, because dopamine also controls motivation. And so you have no motivation to do anything. And so if you look at other drugs, so our bodies are designed to handle 50 nanograms per deciliter of dopamine. But when you do drugs like methamphetamine, 1,100, 20 times the normal amount. Think about putting 20 times the normal amount of electricity into the wires in this place. It would just implode, right? Well, we're really smart. Our bodies are way smarter than we'll ever be, and so we have all kinds of compensation for that, and that's exactly what addiction is. Addiction is our body's attempt to compensate for this overload of dopamine. If that's the neural adaptation that we were talking about earlier. So your brain's a busy place, and like the rest of your body, it strives for balance. You eat a bag of pretzels, you increase the level of salt in your body. What do? You get thirsty, so you drink way more water than you normally do to bring the salt and water balance back into balance, because our bodies are smart. When you take drugs, your body goes, oh, here they go again, way too much dopamine, I gotta do something. So what does your body do? It stops making its own dopamine, which means you cannot be happy. And you also, the receptors that bond with the dopamine go away, so you become insensitive to the dopamine. And so that's really the tragedy with drug abuse, is that you lose the ability to experience pleasure. And if you've known anyone who's an addict, you know they might be feeling pretty good when they're doing their drugs, but afterwards you go as low as you went high. You become deaf to pleasure, just like when you go to a concert and you stand next to the speakers that are as big as that door, you blast your hearing, your body goes, oh, here they go again. So it puts down the shields, just like in Star Wars, to make you insensitive to that sound so you don't blow out your hearing, which is really close to your brain. That's just, you go as low as you go high. So let's talk about buprenorphine or Suboxone. How many in this room have heard of Suboxone or buprenorphine? How many of you know what it is? Okay, that's why I'm here. Okay, this is one of the drugs that we call medication-assisted treatment. Okay, so if we really view drug addiction as a treatable medical illness, think about a diabetic going into their doctor and sitting down and their doctor saying, you know, Joe, you really need to buck up and get that pancreas of yours making insulin. Would that ever happen? No, but yet we expect addicts to do that. We expect addicts to heal the dopamine systems in their brain on their own without any help. Because when you insult your brain again and again and again, those receptors, constantly with drugs, they become hypersensitive and they need time to heal. These drugs allow you time for your brain to heal. Now, when I started this work, I thought, oh, this is great. This is a real feel-good kind of thing. Everybody's going to be on the same bus, and it'll be wonderful, you know. And nothing could be farther from the truth. It's a very controversial thing because, like methadone, buprenorphine is an opiate, but it's a very different kind of opiate. Number one, nobody dies from taking it, whereas with methadone is number 3 on the list of opiates that people overdose and die on. You cannot take. It doesn't suppress your breathing. It's a very interesting drug, and don't get me talking about it. But basically, it has a ceiling effect, so you can take a certain amount, but it never gets to the point where it depresses your breathing. You take more drug, you don't get more effect after a certain point. That's called the ceiling effect. And the other thing is, a vast majority of people do not get high off of it. So here's a little neuron with the little receptors there, and buprenorphine goes, and it just sticks on there. And so when somebody takes heroin, the buprenorphine actually bonds stronger to the neuron than heroin does. In fact, buprenorphine will kick heroin off. And so so what happens is it prevents withdrawal symptoms by binding to those receptors, and also provides enough effect so the person does not have craving. And I can tell you, I'm an RN, and it's just amazing working with physicians and watching my own evolution after spending 3 days at a methadone clinic and spending the last 3 months talking to people with opioid use disorder in Siskiyou County, everyone from homeless heroin addicts to corporate PhDs who are all addicted, and talking to them about what buprenorphine has done for their life. It really puts people in the medical system through some changes, and it's gratifying to watch that change happen. Anyway, so that's how buprenorphine works. It eliminates withdrawal symptoms and cravings. And so the other important thing to remember to the statement that, you know, it's just replacing one addiction with another, there's a difference between abuse and addiction and dependency. Okay, addiction is also a psychological state. The definition of addiction is continued use despite adverse consequences. People keep using even though really bad things are happening, and they're doing really bad things like robbing banks and, you know, messing around with their marriages and all that kind of stuff. Whereas dependency is simply you have withdrawal symptoms if you don't take the drug, okay? So that's a big distinction that we need to make. You know, we don't give people a bad time for being on seizure medicine for the rest of their lives. Oh, you got to get off that stuff, you know. and you talk to people who are on buprenorphine, you know, it's like the same. It's amazing. The same words come out of people's mouths 9 out of 10 times. It's like I just don't want this drug. I don't want to go back to where I was. I do not want to go back to where I was. I don't mind being on this drug for however long it takes. So benefits of this is that people get their lives back, they don't have craving or withdrawal, and they quit committing crimes and exposing themselves to the risk of HIV and hepatitis C. This is another graph from the opioid dashboard on the number of buprenorphine prescriptions that are happening in Siskiyou County. And I don't know what 35 is, but basically you can see that the graph is going up. When we started a year ago, 2 years ago, we had one prescriber in the county who was prescribing Suboxone or buprenorphine. You have to have a special extra 8 hours of training to prescribe it. And now we have 8 prescribers of the drug. So let's take a look at the benefits of it. After 12 months, 80% and rising of patients are opioid-free, and 60% are still in treatment. And you might think, well, that's not too impressive, but it's pretty good. But if you look at the alternative, this is 30 days, not 30 months. This is detox. This is going into detox with no further treatment. After 30 days, 9 out of 10 patients are back using. Okay? And if you go out to 45 days, it's about 100%. The other thing, another benefit, this is standardized mortality ratio, and I don't know what that means, but again, the standardized mortality ratio for just the general population is 1, and which would have to do with the death rate. So people with opioid use disorder who have no treatment have 6 times the mortality, rating of 6, and those on medication-assisted treatment who get treatment, it's less than 2, so it's 2/3 less. The federal government gave the state of California $90 million to address this issue some time ago, 2 years ago, and what California decided to do with it is to model after a program in Vermont called the hub and spoke model. Vermont cut their overdose and death rate by 2/3 using this model, and it basically hubs are areas where they only treat substance use disorder, and spokes are areas where, like primary care or just a regular doctor's office who prescribes Suboxone in the context of their regular practice. And I think the map is there. So this is kind of a map. So this is so there were 19 grants in the state, and these are only the ones that Aegis Treatment Center got because they're up here, and they are managing these grants. There are 6 hubs, and those are the red dots. Our hub is in red, so that's where the substance use disorder main treatment is going to be. It's not quite up and running yet, but it will be soon. And then there's spokes, and a spoke is basically any doctor's office or clinic that has a practitioner who is prescribing Suboxone. So in our county, that's Fairchild Medical Center has 2 prescribers. The Karuk Tribe has a prescriber. Dignity Mount Shasta has a prescriber and is a spoke. Mountain Valleys and Weed is prescribing, and Dr. Stossel here in town is prescribing. So those are, and Tule Lake is probably going to be coming on board soon as well. They're a spoke. And so what does the Hub and Spoke grant do? Well, it pays for training for physicians. It reimburses physicians for treatment. If a patient can't pay, if they have no insurance, they're uninsured or underinsured, it pays. If they are not Medi-Cal eligible, the grant is a payer of last resort. But if someone has no insurance and does not qualify for Medi-Cal, it pays. If you have Blue Cross insurance, a lot of insurances don't pay for medication-assisted treatment, so it will pay co-pays and deductibles for that. It will pay for the co-pay and deductible on medication, which can be $500 a month. It helps provide transportation, and it requires that patients get some counseling, because we know that patients who are on buprenorphine tend to do a little bit better when they have some support. So that's some of the things that the grant does. Wow, okay. And my message is never, never, ever give up on yourself or on people that you love and care about, because it can take a long time. And you have to be there when people are ready. And they're not always ready when we want them to. In fact, they're never ready when we want them to be ready. So, And that's my contact information. I have a brochure that lists the contact information for every place in the county that will prescribe Suboxone. And I will leave my last 2 business cards in the back, so if anyone is interested in having the 40-minute version of this talk, or one of the things the coalition is doing is we're doing a lot of community outreach. We're doing opioid awareness nights where I do my brain talk. We have somebody who's in recovery, who's local, who comes in and talks, and then we distribute Narcan. So we have Naloxone, the drug that reverses overdoses, and we've done 4 of those. We did one here at the Resource Center on last Monday, and we're going to be in McLeod at the high school February 20th. So, any questions?
Thank you, Maggie Shepard, for your presentation. Any clarifying questions from council?
Thank you.
Thank you. I took your training last Monday, too.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maggie.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now we move on to public comment. So welcome to the city council member. The city invites the public to address the council on matters on the consent agenda and matters not listed on the agenda. Right now I have the list. I know I have, right now I have Sean File. Is that your name? Sean File is here from, is it Boy Scouts? Yeah. From the Boy Scouts, he'd like to address the council. And if anyone else wants to be on the public comment list, the list is here. I'll put your name down. Nyan. Okay, welcome, Sean. If you could please speak into the microphone, because we're recording the meeting for people that are listening remotely, and tell us your name and what you'd like to say.
All right. Hi, I'm Sean File, and I have a concern about the traffic light at Elma Street and Mount Shasta Boulevard. And it just blinks red, and I've almost seen like half a dozen accidents there, because it's a pretty busy area. It's right by like the burger place, and it's just a busy area. I'm just concerned that someone's gonna have an accident, get hurt. That's really it.
What's the location again?
Elma Street and Mount Shasta Boulevard.
Elm and Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
So, Sean, you said you actually saw some accidents. Is that
I've almost seen
or
some
near?
accidents.
Are you saying you saw near misses?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you want to
pretty close.
describe a little bit? Was it both? Was it only automobiles, or automobile pedestrian, or bicycles?
Automobiles. They just second guess themselves, and they just almost get in accidents.
So how was the accident avoided from what you saw?
Slamming on the brakes, or I don't know, trying to avoid the way. They just second guess each other, and yeah.
Okay. So, do you have any suggestions for council?
I don't know if that's supposed to like turn. Is it like supposed to turn green? And because I think if it got put up, there was a study there that it was needed. So I don't know. I think it's supposed to turn green and red to help people so they don't get in accidents.
Okay. Yes. This is for public comment. We're not really supposed to be going into a dialogue of exchange, but I can give you some information. The city is quite aware that that's a blinking light that needs repair. We went out for bid to get that job done, and the bid came in pretty high, higher than we expected. So we put the job on hold, and we expect to go out to bid on for it again to get it repaired. We understand that it's currently we're letting the citizens deal with the blinking light at the moment.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you'd like us
No, thank you.
to say to us? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming to council.
Thank you.
And Nyan? And anybody else want to sign up? No? Nyan and Jennifer? Is it Jennifer? Rebecca.
Nyan and Rebecca. Yeah, Alua Kombucha. Hi, guys. First of all, I'd like to say I'm very impressed. Right on. That's the right way to go for our youth, is to start actually taking action. Even a stoplight is not small enough or not big enough. You know, the sky's the limit. You guys remember me from last meeting? Hi. So we thought that we had everything in place, and we followed up with emails and phone calls to be on the agenda for today. We are 100% ready to close escrow on our building. Obviously, connection fees are still the issue, and we'd like to move to have the council, I've been told that the council needs 2 votes to have this actually be on an agenda item. So what I'd like for you guys to consider is that you know, we are not only purchasing a building, not only paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to remodel it, to make it an attraction for Mount Shasta, and something that Mount Shasta will take pride in. But at the same time is while we're getting up and running, we're getting hit with what we've now calculated with the help of Mr. Pope and as well as Dave Smith, building inspector, $17,000 connection fee. And that's just for the connections we need to open. And that's not because we want those connections, it's because we're required to have those connections, okay? We could probably do what we need to do with a hose spigot out back, but that doesn't fly with the health department. So really, I see an obvious solution, which would be, number one is to extend, option A would be to extend your residential moratorium of 75% reduction in these fees to commercial for a 3-year period. But option B would actually be more favorable, and I think that that's a stronger case to incentivize new businesses. Because, you know, on item K on your future agenda items, you have vacant buildings ordinance. We need to address not only vacant buildings in Mount Shasta, but incentives for business. You know, there's a lot of business owners or people that are potential business owners that can't get the means together. They can't get the means for production. They can't make it into somebody that's generating sales tax revenue for the city, or you know, using you know, more water than a crystal shop, you know, in a facility. So option B, I would like to be eliminate commercial connection fees for existing buildings, period. And that would be my preference. So I would like to have this, have at least you guys look at and decide whether this can be on the next meeting, because I'm 100% ready to close escrow on this building, but I'm really waiting on you. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just wanted to answer your question. I have a question for you as well. Okay. We changed the process since Jeffrey Collins left the city council 2 years ago. We have redefined the protocols. How we add items to the agenda has changed. Two council members during the agenda, the future agenda items portion of the meeting, 2 council members can propose to add onto the future agenda item list. We still go through a pre-agenda process where we decide ultimately what ends up being on the agenda. So the process has changed somewhat, where beforehand it was allowed for 2 council members to go in to talk to the city manager and request an item on the agenda, but we found that to be quite disruptive to staff time. Staff time is busy trying to meet the current goals of the council, and for 2 council members to walk into his office and ask him to drop everything and I want you to look at this is a little bit disruptive, so we tried to respect the time of the council, so we changed that protocol. So there's a new process. So you said that these connections are required, but yes. I understood that you had a design that you have in mind for your business operation. So yeah. Those connections are required because you're requiring them for your business. Is that correct?
Well, if we were to move our business from one location in Mount Shasta connected to the city to another location in Mount Shasta that's already connected to the city, then yes, we have to move 3-tier sinks, 3 basin sinks. We have to move prep sinks. We have to move hand sinks. In order to serve food, we need 2 ADA compliant bathrooms. So yes, these are required.
So in essence, you are remodeling a building, putting in sinks and bathrooms, and so those are the connection fees that you're referring to as part of your building upgrade.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to clarify. Any other questions?
How can I get this on the agenda?
I can say it again. Basically, when we get to the future agenda item list, 2 council members can propose to add those. That's how we add items to the agenda.
Is that at this meeting, or is that something?
That's later on at this meeting. Later on at this meeting.
Great.
Okay.
Just
Thank you,
one clarifying question. So the actual drain pipe that connects to the city main sewer side, that's not going to be changed, correct?
No.
Okay. No. And then the water main going into the building is not going to be altered?
Neither one of those are changed.
Okay.
We're
so this is all tenant improvements.
We're moving an existing facility from
these are all tenant improvements required by health code requirements.
Absolutely.
And you just happen to be going to be the future building owner, so it's self-tenant improvements. Got it.
Exactly. It's a major risk for us, and you know, by just pushing these items onto, okay, now it's not due before final, we'll pay it out over 3 years. Well, guess what? Most businesses, 95% of businesses fail in 3 years. So we don't want to be one of those. We need an exemption, or we need a radical reduction. And I think that that goes for multiple businesses in the city. And I think we can attract great businesses if we don't make it such a high barrier to entry.
Thank you for your comments.
So thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment at this time? We now have council and staff comments. Who would like to begin? For Bruce, do you want to start?
No, thank you, Mayor Walker. Wagner? We just, a couple brief comments. One, the council may be aware that there was an ongoing discussion at the hospital about bus service, bus parking, traffic conflicts. And so we have been involved from the staff level working with the county transportation office and the hospital to try to resolve this. And I think we have come to a solution that seems mutually acceptable to the various parties. And that's in final negotiation of an MOU, which would result in the placement of a new bus stop at the hospital that would maintain the service and actually eliminate the traffic conflicts in front of the hospital. So that has moved forward. The other item that we were working on with the council was the photovoltaic project with Johnson Controls, which is the selected contractor. That project is moving forward. We'd hope to have that on the agenda either tonight or the 28th for actual ratification of the implementation contract. Johnson Controls has finished their initial feasibility study and reached the same conclusion that the Climate Tech Group did in their independent analysis, that the project is economically feasible. It's not before you now because there are a couple legal issues that the city attorney is dealing with and bond counsel is dealing with, but we have made progress, so we expect that to be coming back to you fairly soon. And that would be my comments for this evening.
Okay. Are there any more staff comments for tonight? No? On to council comments?
So I've got a couple.
Okay.
So we resolved to enter into a contract with Thrive Hive for approximately $14,000 in services to promote the city with respect to businesses coming to the city. Where is that negotiation led, or has it been dropped?
That has led to a conclusion that the original format for the program was not workable. So what we're doing is we've contacted the people that run our webpage, and so they're coming. They were scheduling them in to come in and modify the webpage, so that information will then go directly to the webpage for the answers and for the links to the various services and facilities here that we're trying to connect people from other areas with. We will still focus the advertising on the San Francisco Bay Area initially, but rather than going to a landing page as it's described, it'll come to the city webpage.
Okay, so we're not going to be spending $14,000 then?
Excuse me?
We're not going to be spending $14,000 on with, for Thrive Hive services?
I can't answer that question at this point in time.
Okay, so it's pending?
Pending.
Okay, well, then the other thing was the grant for a study of the EIFD program.
Correct.
How's that going?
We have not been awarded the contract. federal government is not working.
Okay. But it hasn't been rejected
So
either.
it hasn't been rejected. So we're just in a holding pattern.
It's pending. All right.
We expected to hear sometime around February or March. Now we don't know.
All right, so that was clarifications the council had to staff. Are there any council comments at this time? Or any more clarifications? So I have a few. First, I need to apologize first. Apologize to Tim Stearns. He let me know that he felt that I was talking to him inappropriately, so I apologize to him online. Secondly, I apologize for my article in the newspaper that I did not pass before the city government. Before I submitted, I was on a sort of practice of just writing to the newspaper independent of the city, but as mayor, you have extra responsibilities and you have to pass by communications by the city manager and city staff. So I apologize for that as well. So I'm still learning. Hopefully I can learn from my lessons along the way, as all of us might be able to. So you know the Forest Service is on furlough, so anything that we want to do with the Forest Service is on hold until we can get the federal government back up and running. We had last week a city selection committee, and Paul Engstrom was nominated to be on LAFCO. Realize that LAFCO is a county-wide committee, so as a rep, you are representing all the cities of Siskiyou County, not just Mount Shasta, and you're also interfacing with the county on annexations for selected cities. It's really important to attend. You should arrange for, if you cannot attend, we should make arrangements for have some kind of representative there, because anytime a city is absent, that gives a larger representation of the county vote and not an equal representation for city votes. So we really want to have you presence there for those meetings. I thought that I would ask city council members to solicit suggestions for community recognition. The chamber does recognitions, but usually of members of the chamber. So I would ask that the council keep in mind who they think might be a good nomination. I have a few already in mind, but let's keep those communication channels open and try to get some suggestions there. Also, if you have any suggestions for proclamations, if you want to support a certain event in town, whether it's Earth Day or the climb, anything that you'd like a city proclamation to show that we fully support an event and all the concepts behind that event, bring those forward and make sure that they get on the agenda. I understand that for the first time in the history of the city local government, that the League of California Cities was totally booked for any registrants. So John Redmond didn't get on the training for new council members. It's very unfortunate because it's a very valuable training, especially when you're brand new to a council.
It will work out. Instead of going to Sacramento this week, I get to spend September in Monterey. So there's enough.
You don't want to send them to the Irvine one? There's another
Monterey's fine.
But huh?
Steve with Monterey.
Oh, Monterey's booked too?
The Monterey. Oh, the Irvine's book too. So the Monterey, isn't that for more executive? Is that the executive one?
Should I just go to Oregon or something?
Huh? Okay. Okay, good. Cool. So I'm glad you're. So September. So just be aware. You know how valuable that training was from the league. Realize that John Redmond hasn't gone through that training. Anything we can help to orient him for his job and responsibilities along the way would be very helpful. I also understand that we haven't reviewed the protocols yet for the new members. So I think it's really important that we get that orientation going for the new members. We're already 2 months into the job, and I think it's important that you know a little bit more about what your duties and responsibilities are as soon as possible. So you have that all planned, you? I don't have a date set yet. Okay. Oh, okay.
You can count on me to break lots of them. I'm teasing, dear.
And hopefully they'll be reported by our honest citizens. Okay, what else? Cannabis, okay, we got a postcard through the mail on, we have a big cannabis issue going before the Planning Commission tomorrow, if you want to hear the debate on that. The meeting's tomorrow night. They will come to council probably later in March. So about that time, we'll make our own decision based on the Planning Commission's recommendations. So we will see that coming forward. Realize that we need our citizens to be informed. Therefore, we need to be very informed on the issue. So if you don't feel informed about a certain issue, especially the cannabis issue that's coming forward and giving a lot of livelihood to community conversation, try to get yourself educated on it and see what the issues are. It would help a relationship with our community if we ourselves are knowledgeable about the situation. So, anything else? Disaster preparedness, super important. I think that fire season is only a couple months away. I've encouraged Bruce to please look at how we can be the best prepared we can be in the next couple months. So in a sense, I've asked him to prioritize it, but what we really need to do is set the community city goals as a group. So hopefully we'll be able to schedule that a little later. And I think that's it for now. So any other comments? Okay, now we're going to move to the consent agenda. The city manager recommends approval of the following consent agenda items. All resolutions and ordinances on this agenda or added hereto shall be introduced or adopted as applicable by title only, and the full reading thereof is hereby waived. So we're going to approve the minutes of December 10th. We're going to accept the Brown Act Committee minutes of the Downtown Enhancement Advisory Committee, approve the disbursements, declare surplus equipment, and receive the police department monthly report.
Move to approve the consent agenda items A through E, including CCR-19-59. Questions?
Once we have a second, I think we can go into discussion. Does anybody want to offer a second?
The second.
Okay, and then discussion? Did you want to pull anything off, or?
Yeah, I just had a couple quick questions.
Okay, a couple quick questions, fine.
Parrish here? What? He had to leave. Do you happen to know why we're selling a 2018 Ford SUV?
It was in an accident.
An accident?
It was totaled.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the water fountain vehicle?
Was that the water fountain vehicle, do you know? Yeah.
And is the police report, which is headlines, which are, all the charts are from December last year to December, or December 2017 to December 2018, were those, does anybody know? Because I'm trying to catch up. If that's a function of trying to say what has happened in our town crime-wise for the first year that marijuana has been legal? Is that why they're dished up that way?
No, about 6 to 8 months ago. I can't remember how long it's been, but some of those city reports that are coming forward are point-in-time reports. So they're single-point data, and you can't really tell much about what's happening in your town by looking at a single point. What you want to do is see the trends over time. Is that your question? Why is the data being presented?
No, there's lots of trends for year-long trends in all kinds of.
So we're looking at year-long trends because that gives an idea of relative to time, how our city's performing and what the criminal activities are. So what's your question?
I was just wondering if the December to December, because obviously December 2017 was the last month before marijuana became legal, and we're getting a year later snapshot. We never got these before. I'm just wondering if that's relative to...
It's actually unrelated, but I suppose you could use that as a reference.
Through the chair, Bruce, why did Parish Cross start bringing in these statistics more frequently?
Because the council asked him to.
Okay.
Because, as the mayor was saying, the report she was giving was for a short period of time, more specific for that incident or that period. This gives us a look at longer-term trends and projections of where we're going or where we need to put further emphasis.
So it's not related to cannabis being legalized or
No.
It's just coincidental timing on that. But,
Just wondering.
okay, anything else?
Nope, that's all for me.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Passes unanimously. Item number 8 is a public hearing on the Community Development Block Grant, Notice of Public Availability. I'm opening the public hearing. You want to hear the staff report first, and then I open the public hearing?
Is she on?
Hello, there we go. Actually, we need to cancel this public hearing. The application for the Notice of Funding Availability has been extended to the end of February. Therefore, we'll be doing the public hearing at the next meeting, and it gives us some time to do some strategizing as to, we're going to actually develop and add a supplemental activity to our application in hopes that it will be funded. Just a little history of this. Economic development, the economic development piece of the CDBG application is funded 30%. 30% of the amount of the money that is funded in the state of California is for economic development, which for us would be our business loans and those sorts of things. That fortunately is not very competitive. So if you're applying for economic development, you have a much better chance to receive that funding. We don't qualify for any infrastructure type funding through CDBG because of our median household income. You know, our income is too high. The other thing that we're applying for are services, which is our very popular senior snow removal and our very popular security deposit program. Those particular things, services through CDBG is funded 15%. 15% of the block is for services. That is a very highly competitive application process. So our strategy is to also add snow removal services because we're able to add a supplemental, what they call a supplemental activity. We can do one, and we're going to do that for snow removal as well. So we're hedging our bet. If we don't get the snow removal funding through the services piece of things, we may be able to get it through the supplemental activity for snow removal. So that's where we're moving. So we're changing things a little bit in our application, and because we have more time to do it, it meant that we're able to strategize and do that. So we're canceling the public hearing for this evening, and we'll be doing it at the next council meeting, and we'll have more on it. I'll have some more historical data on it, what we've done with CDBG through the years, and all of that sort of thing. So
clarifying questions to Muriel? No? Okay, I have some. So you mentioned 30% economic development, 15% services, and then you also have the supplemental activity. Is this supposed to add up to 100%?
It does if you start adding things like infrastructure, that they would fund infrastructure projects and public facility type projects that we don't necessarily qualify for. So we're going after the things that we qualify for, and they spread the way they allocate their funding to these particular types of things. So,
okay, so even though
the thing to remember is that the economic development piece is not as competitive as some of the other things, so we have a better chance of receiving that funding. The services part of it, where we do our snow removal and our security deposits, that is highly competitive. So we have less of a chance to actually get those particular programs which is why we're re-strategizing and trying to add a supplemental activity, which you can do one within the scope.
Okay. So you're saying the snow removal and security deposit programs are highly popular. That means you really don't have enough funds to service those.
No.
The demand.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the state only has so much money. We're in competition between other cities and other agencies within the state for that funding. So they're looking at all the applications and they're grading those applications. If you don't score high enough on a particular thing and they only have so much to allocate, you may not get funded.
Okay. So as far as we do not qualify for infrastructure because our income's too high, does that also mean that we're not applying for CDBG funds to retrofit your housing for fire-resistant siding? Is that part of what infrastructure means?
No. The housing program is a whole nother part of CDBG. The problem with saying that we're going to put new types of fire-resistant siding on people's houses that doesn't meet the requirements for housing rehab. You have to have a structure that is basically falling apart to meet the requirement for somebody to come in and re-side it or re-roof it or put windows in or any of those types of things. They basically have to be pretty much failing to begin with. So to say that you want to put more fire-resistant siding on people who qualifies on those houses, they don't go. It's apples and oranges. It just doesn't work. As far as going after housing funding, we've done that off and on for the past more than 20 years. It was popular some 15, 20 years ago, not so popular now. The last time that we actually had funding and we went out, it's been the year before last, we had money available for housing rehab. We had one person apply that qualified to have their roof replaced. That was it. So the funds are better spent in other areas.
That's not enough to justify that kind of activity.
Not in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Can we close this item? Since she gave a report, are we entertaining public comment? We're not.
Yes, it's on the agenda. And
you're saying
we've discussed it. We should take public comment.
We did decide to take this item off the agenda, but since we've been discussing it, we're okay.
One of the solutions that was presented by the city was that I do a CBDG loan. I applied for it. I believe that we're well qualified for it, and I believe that it does fit into the category of economic development. We are trying to create jobs. We're trying to generate more sales tax revenue that the city, I believe, gets something out of. But then I was told that, actually just recently today, I was told that I had to switch over to another loan system because there was no funds in CBDG. And the other loan system, I can't borrow as much money, and I have to pay over double the amount of interest. And that's through another outfit. So just to clarify on the CBG, you're talking about how snow removal is competitive and that the housing thing wasn't really successful. But where's the economic thing that wasn't very competitive? Like, where's that money going? Like, can we get?
Well,
like, let's boost this up.
Well, that's what we're applying for. We're applying for $500,000 worth of funding in that application, which then makes the possibility of the loan to happen.
Right. So this, but basically what you're saying is that this funding does not exist today. You don't have any money in the bank account for this kind of thing.
We don't.
So even when I applied and we spoke about originally, it sounded like it was going forward. It's not going forward anymore. Is that correct?
Correct. We don't have an open contract right now.
Okay. So just for the record, you guys, I did try to go through your loan program. It's not available, and it's got switched over to something that's 250% the interest that CBG was.
Do you mind sharing like the difference interest rates?
CBG was somewhere in the range of 3 to 3.5%. The loan that I was offered in return was 8.5%. with a 1.5% fee to close.
Okay, thank you.
So 10%.
All right, thank you. And there's another public comment. Nancy.
Hi, Nancy Swift with the Jefferson Economic Development Institute right here in your town. I am here for the hearing that got canceled, so I'll be back. and look forward to assisting the city to create the most effective and competitive proposal. It is tricky, and non-entitlement areas are experiencing a cost with the changes that have happened at the California Housing and Community Development and the changes they've implemented with the CDBG program. And as you know, we've implemented a program for you in microenterprise technical assistance for many years, and it's still an important program to keep in the mix. So always available to help. And I'm not sure if this is appropriate, but I wanted to offer my assistance, whether or not we get that grant. If there's any discussion and review and you want members of the public, I think it's gone now, to look at your fees, your fees that affect business owners, I'd be happy to participate in that. I'm very clear that it's a barrier to startup businesses. Some of you on the council have already experienced that. And to get the best information about that, if you already have it, but if you're looking for someone from the public, I'd be happy to participate in understanding that better and educating better about that. I know part of your general planning conversations have had that. I also wanted to let you know that our Women's Business Center, which is in part funded through the Small Business Administration, is affected by our government shutdown, and we're doing our best to keep ourselves open until they're working again to fund reimbursements. One of our partners in that project is the Wells Fargo Foundation, and they've given us some money to help build some tools and awareness around disaster preparedness for business, in particular because of the fires throughout our region. And our Women's Business Center extends into Shasta, Trinity, and Humboldt counties. And so I would be really happy, we would be really happy to participate with the city or include the city in conversations about what you see might be helpful to build for as disaster preparedness relates to our business community. Just thought I'd let you know.
So what's the procedure then? We come see you and talk?
I'm sorry?
What is the procedure then? We come and meet with you?
Yes, please. 926-6670.
Thank you.
Or I'll call you. Thank you.
All right, so it's time to move on to the next agenda item. So now we have item number 9, approval of library expansion, 30% drawings, report by Bruce Pope.
Thank you. So in November of 2018, Mount Shasta Engineering brought before the City Council drawings for the expansion of the library building. Council reviewed those drawings with the engineer, with staff, took public comment on the drawings, had extensive public comment, and basically the council sent the drawings back to the engineering firm with the direction that city staff would meet and work with the engineer to look at the different issues raised, the questions that the different participants were raising about design and function of the library, and then relook at a revised set of 30% drawings. Now, we have done that, and when I say staff meetings, I'm referring to the city manager, the city planner, the public works director, and the librarian. And we have held a series of meetings with the engineering firm to go over the design that they had submitted originally, provided them with input, concerns, asked for changes, and they had further meetings regarding our recommended changes consequences of those changes. And what is attached here as a set of drawings is the revised 30% drawings. We do these drawings in stages. As you design a building, things can tend to evolve, and so you take it in pieces so you can make those adjustments as you go, and we can keep everybody informed. The 30% drawings are of particular importance because it gives you the first look, as everybody, the first look at what the engineer has come up with in terms of the design of a building, the layout of the building, and how this building is going to function. That's your first review. It's even more important in the consideration that the 30% drawing is designed to set the footprint of the building. This is the outline of the building. This is how this building will sit on the site and in relationship to things like the wetlands, the boundaries, the existing parking. Now, it's important also because until we have the 30% drawings approved, which sets the footprint, we cannot start the CEQA process. Additionally, we cannot start the negotiations with the school district for the additional property for the parking that's anticipated. So there were questions. We attempted to resolve those. We brought back the revised drawings, so we need you to consider these drawings and hopefully approve them so we can then move towards the 60% drawings and getting the CEQA process on this started, getting the parking property negotiations started. You have options here. When you look at this, you can approve these as submitted. You could make other recommendations for changes, or you could ask to start the process over. It's kind of the series of options you would have in this process. So if you look at the attached drawings, if you remember back to the original 30% drawings that were submitted, the building was slightly larger than it is now, and the new addition was turned at an angle in relationship to the existing building. And that was one of the concerns that people had and how it impacted the wetlands. So we've made these changes. We've changed some of the interior layouts, which have to do with a lot to do with the operation of the library in terms of visibility and control, especially over the youth area. Young children need constant supervision, constant security. One of the issues raised previously as well, in the youth area, we'll just put some cameras in and you can monitor their activity that way. That was unacceptable. That creates too high of a risk area. So we've changed it, made the internal changes to reflect that, so we have that visibility constantly, so we have control over not just the children, but people that interact with the children. That may be the more critical element. So I think this has addressed a lot of the issues. It's still a larger building than some people anticipated, but it meets the needs of a functional library, as I set out. It has multi-purpose room in the light green. On the back side, it has the restrooms, so you have multiple points of ingress and egress to the building. So you could hold private meetings in here without opening the entire library to the public. So I think it accomplishes most of those objectives. So staff, and in this case, staff is the city manager, the library, and the public works director, the planner, are all recommending approval of the attached plans.
Any clarifying questions? for staff? None? I have a question. So let's say in order to do CEQA and to address the parking issue, we approve the 60% drawing, but put the 30% drawing and put the 60% activity on hold for, would that affect the parking lot in the CEQA? Could you still proceed with CEQA and parking once 30% is approved and hold off on the 60, or is it automatic that you go to 60 as a result?
When you approve the 30%, we will start moving immediately on the 60%. Okay. That will take a period of time. We will also move on the CEQA and the parking. They're all interconnected.
Okay, thank you. So if there are no other clarifying questions, I guess we're going to, yes, you have one? Clarifying questions to staff, or?
I'm not quite sure who to direct these to.
Okay.
They're just questions about, because
Well,
John and I are new.
you can ask questions of staff now, or you can open for public input.
Mm-hmm.
Then after you receive the public input, you can close the public comment period and then bring back to council for council discussion.
You want to do that?
And council can at that time
Okay.
ask any clarifying questions of staff.
Are you okay with that, John? Yeah, okay. So we're going to go ahead and open to public comment at this time and go from there. Now, were you expecting a report from the executive director of the library? From Courtney? Or is she also
No, her,
involved?
Ms. Leverty is free to make what comments she chooses
So she's
to,
part of the public at
but
this point,
this
this
is
process?
part of, her comments are incorporated into the staff report.
Okay.
And are reflective.
Last time she's talked separately, so I was just wondering if you were
Right.
going to do the same
And-
process.
And her comments are also reflected in the drawings.
Okay. All right, so we're open for public comment. Is there anybody who'd like to speak at the podium at this time on this issue? Seeing none? Yes? No? No? It doesn't look like there's any public comment on this topic.
Then will you close the public comment period, please?
I will close the public comment period then.
And bring
And
it
we're
back
going
to council.
to council discussion. So you had some questions about what's going on.
Please indulge me, being this, for both John and I, don't mean to speak for him, but we're both just starting. This is our first meeting, and
You have 4 years' experience, haven't you, though?
yeah, but I'm not up to speed on what the library is, and you know, I would, Courtney, if you know, nod. You happy with this?
Yes,
Okay. Not that she wouldn't be, but you know, I've not said hello to you or met you, and I'm just kind of trying to come up to speed. And is there a timeline for the 60 and 100% arena? Where are we going to get that done this year?
We'll get the drawings done this year.
Right. Yeah, not the building, just
Right.
so we can
Correct.
meet the 2019 building codes. This was what I'm.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
Correct.
Who pays? Who's paying for all this? I don't know where the money's coming from. Is this coming out of Friends of the Library Fund? It's coming out of, who's paying for this?
Okay. The basis the council went forward on this, when we looked at the project and the cost of what it takes to build these buildings in this economy, it became clear, at least to staff, that the 0.25% tax is not adequate to build the building. Because a lot of that money, the majority of that money is going to present operations. So you cannot build the building with the 0.25% and cover the present operations. You need additional source of funds. So one of the commitments staff made to the council is, if you chose to go forward, as the council did, that once we had drawings, you know, shovel-ready type drawings, then we'd be able to have an estimate of cost, and staff would use its efforts to find independent sources of funds to build this building with.
And I have questions about the money to build the building, but I'm just talking about getting the plans. Are there...
We have the money out of that.
Do you know how much this costs? I mean, I'm sorry, I just don't know anything. Roughly, is there an estimate for 30, 60, and 100% plans?
Yes,
how much it's going to cost?
We approved a whole contract with Mount Shasta Engineering that sets the total cost of this project.
And that's...
You're going to ask me off the top of my head.
I have the number.
I don't remember.
Through the chair, the original contract amount was $199,000, and then it was an add-on for change order, basically.
Yes, we had a change order that came in because we anticipated high probability that if we were to get funding, it would have a federal relationship, which triggered the need for a NEPA document as well as a CEQA.
Right now, is that included in this contract, the NEPA and
yes.
CEQA?
Yeah, and I think that put it at 216 or 219.
216.
216, yeah. Okay.
So 216, and my understanding at the time and still is that there was a surplus built up over the years,
right,
on that particular fund, the library tax fund, and the monies would be subtracted from that, right, Muriel, to pay for this contract. So in other words, the library surplus that's been reserved, that's been developing over the years, is being, part of that is being applied to this contract.
Great.
So that's covered.
Great, thank you.
By the library tax.
Okay. Is it okay if I ask another question? And it's to build the building. Is Dennis Johnson by any chance here? Hi, Dennis. I've not met you in person. We've spoken. Who was very helpful in helping me get some key chunks of numbers that there's roughly, and I'm looking for anybody to tell me, no, these numbers aren't right, or you're crazy, or what's going on with this, but the 0.25% sales tax is bringing in roughly $250,000 a year. And the vast majority of that, save for a short buffer, is salaries, maintenance, and operations on the current library.
Well, if you look at the billing cycle, she spends about $12,000 a month on staff, right? So there's 100, what is that,
144.
144,000 out of the 250. So you
Right.
still have approximately 100,000 remaining. And out of that, we have some supplies and
Maintenance, operational, all the.
But
again,
I don't think we're spending 100,000
No, he said.
on the rest.
And Dennis, what, yeah.
The annual appropriated budget for this year, is it 219, Ariel? Somewhere in there? It's close to that. $219,000 to operate the library.
Right. Right, so if you're at, right, got it. So roughly if you're at 220 and you're bringing in 250, you've got a small buffer which you want to keep because you want to have a buffer. And if $350 a square foot is a reasonable building cost estimate, gross estimate for a 6,122 square foot addition, my rough math says that's another roughly $2 million. 2.1, somewhere around 2 million. And if the current, to go out and get a mortgage and take money out of the cash flow stream from the 0.25% sales tax to fund a mortgage, which would be normal, if that's really not an option, which doesn't seem like it is, and I just, is there a plan to raise $2 million? Because I'm sorry, I'm new. I'm just coming up to speed. Okay, but I just kind of start with the beginning, which is how does this thing get
through
paid
the chair? Yeah, your concerns are justified. So the surplus or even projected surpluses will not underwrite the loan payment for the construction of this. So the hope, as the city manager has stated in the past, is to take a well-developed plan to the granting communities, of different types, but I think they have something in mind at the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development Fund. I think that's what's been discussed in the past, to actually get a grant to build the library, or majority of it, and then maybe use the surplus to finance a smaller loan or something like that.
So basically, when we have the drawings complete and we have the cost estimate, then we would be looking at a financing plan in which we would look at grant applications, grant opportunities more correctly. And it is possible, and perhaps even probable, that when we get to that point in time, there will not be grants available of sufficient monies to fund everything. That is a possibility. We tried to explain that going in. Then the other issue that we'd look at in the financing plan is, okay, if a grant for part of it, how do you address the shortfall? And there are different mechanisms. We'd have to put that plan together, bring it to the city council, and the city council would have to agree or disagree. The more we get away from grants, the more risk factor this council has to look at. So there's some serious decisions that will have to be made. But until we get the cost, have a shovel-ready building, we can't really put a real finance plan together.
I promise just one more. Is there any time limit on the plans? Let's say we get the plans done this year in 2019 and we meet the building codes, which are less expensive in 2019 than going forward. Do those plans expire at any time in the future? I mean, like, let's say it takes, I mean, I don't wish this, but let's say it takes 5 years to put all the money together for this. Are the plans still viable?
Well, once you approve these plans, and if they aren't constructed within a year, then you're going to have to come under potential new building codes.
So you've got a year to start.
Correct.
Start construction, not finish, but start, right?
Yeah.
So just a year, huh?
To commence.
Yeah. Ew. Okay.
So has any activities been done to help cultivate those foundations that support libraries currently, or are we actually cultivating those relationships now?
We've looked at a couple of different sources. We've had some positive feedback, but it's only on a general basis. I mean, there's nothing even vaguely resembling a commitment.
Okay. I had some other questions. So I'm looking at these drawings, and I just want to be sure I'm clear. It sounds like the adult section is the current building, is all in the current building, and the children's section is the new section of the library, as well as the multipurpose room and that whole entry on the side.
Correct.
So I know children aren't there all the time, so what is the activity in that children's area when there are no children? I guess that's my question. Can you speak to the microphone, please?
Courtney, yeah.
There's actually been an increase in the use of the children's area by families as the popularity of the library has increased. There's actually not a lot of time when there aren't kids in the library now. There are a lot of families coming all different times. So I don't anticipate that room really being that empty. We made it so that you can use the multi-purpose room during the day. If there's no activity going on, you'll see there's a door right by the desk. So it's not that that area is not available for use at any time.
So,
and I'd be able to offer more programming to families with that space.
So I'm thinking of the views. I'm putting it physically on the earth, the building, and the best views are at the south side because you're looking at the meadow.
Have you actually stood back there and looked? What you're looking at is a bunch of scrubby trees. There's no view of the meadow. Unless that area gets cleaned out, there's no actual view.
So you're
stand
saying
there.
our library has no views, is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Stand there, stand in the back of the building and look straight ahead and see what you're looking at.
I was just there today, and all you see is the alleyway and all the places that the bums hide out and live in.
It's not this amazing landscape. Or you're not looking at the mountain, you're not looking at anything, you're looking at scrubby brush.
Okay.
Just go stand there and look.
Okay, and
that's come up a lot of times. What?
That's wetlands, so you're not gonna clear it out, or at least not easily, I'm assuming.
No. There's no plan to improve the landscaping there because there's nothing you really can do there.
So let's say you bring a very popular author to the library and the community responds in a great way and 200 people want to come to listen to this talk. Do you have a building that can accommodate 200 people?
Not for that venue.
No.
No, you can't like open up the community room into the children's area. It's not set up the way we have it now where you can just move furniture. But if 200 people came to an event to anything in Mount Shasta besides Shasta East Park, I would be amazed.
Then there's that.
You know, I'm just going based on optimal numbers.
What is the capacity in this new design?
I think it's 75 to 100. We don't have it verified because we've still been playing with the size of that building. You haven't looked at it, so.
Yeah. Is there a reason why you didn't connect the children's area to the multipurpose room to allow for a large attended event?
Just placement of other things that were more important, like the bathroom, the family bathroom we put there, storage. It could be, we've discussed it, we had thoughts of making it that way, but the point is to keep that area separate from the library for other events. I mean, I don't know what that kind of a wall would look like. You know, I don't know.
Big sliding glass door or something like that. All right. So, and the other thing I saw is that the circulation desk takes quite a bit of square footage. I know some libraries have actually gone to standing desks like a podium. Some have movable stations for circulation. I know that circulation is it's a great social area for the community. I know there's a lot of conversations that happen at the circulation desk, so it is a very important location. But I'm wondering about the square footage. You think you need?
That's actually also our workspace. Okay, so we have a DVD collection that gets managed. Ron does a lot of work at the side counter there. We don't have a back of house technical services area because we don't really, that's not a primary function of our branch. You know, that work gets done in Wairika, but we do a lot of other work at our workplace, at the circ desk. So we don't have staff to be all over the place. We need to be at the circ desk and doing all our other tasks. It's not just check in, check out. So I made the desk that big to accommodate all the work tasks that people need to do and be present at the desk at the same time.
As somebody who deals with adult children in my bar on a daily basis, I just have, why is there a sink in the children's area next to the children's computers?
I have removed that sink from the drawing several times and it keeps getting put back in. That sink will not be there in the final.
Okay. Good idea.
I didn't ask for the sink.
I only give my adult children 2 sinks for access.
Well, you know,
the
you should
bathrooms.
see the kids at story time in the morning with the water fountain. Don't want a sink in the kids' room like that.
I noticed that Nick Riddle's not here. You don't have to answer that. I could ask that.
We don't know why.
Okay.
We thought he was going to be here. So.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Anything else?
Maybe the sink's for finger painting.
And there's a restroom with a door and an appropriate floor 3 feet away. You know, I was aware of that.
Yeah, water, books, carpet, good combination.
No further questions, then do we have a motion on the
Wait,
drawing?
I guess we've already opened and closed public comment, so that's, yeah, right. So we're done with that.
Right.
Thank you, Courtney.
Courtney.
Did you have more, is there another public comment?
We've already closed the
We already closed the public comment.
Yeah, it's closed.
Okay, so
Okay. So, as you know, I've had issues with this project from the get-go, and many of the questions that I forwarded to the city 2 months ago haven't been answered. I also forwarded a number of questions recently based on this packet to the city and hasn't been answered. So I am not feeling informed enough to move forward, and what I'd like to see before I authorize approval of the 30% drawings, this is just my point of view, is I'd like to see a library board formed to help guide the library in its mission and to facilitate this process. I feel like there's a lack of governance generally in the library. When the county pulled back its funding to the library, they also pulled back most of its governance. It still governs a little bit. But what is missing from this whole process, as the city manager requires the city council to help guide his goals and where he's going, so does the library need a library board to help guide its mission and where it's going.
So would this start things over, forming a board? The whole process would it start over then, or
I think that once a board's in place, they could either once they're in place, they could either say we're okay with the process so far, we adopt the 30% drawings, and we could start again from that point once we have the board in place.
Friends of the Library is not a board?
No, Friends of the Library is the Friends is a nonprofit organization that helps with fundraising for library activity. It's not a library board. It's not a library board of trustees.
Is Courtney the de facto board at the moment?
No, the council is.
Courtney is a city staff
We are.
person who is
She's
I'm sorry.
private contractor.
It says in my contract, not ever to represent myself as a city employee. So when you guys call me city employee,
Sorry.
I am not.
I'll take that back. She is a subcontract, like the IT person is a subcontract, like the building inspector
She's a
is
contractor.
a subcontract. She's a contractor, okay? She is the library director, and she is our point person for any library activity, but she's not being guided by a board.
So the question of a governing board has come before previous councils, and the council has discussed it. There are different approaches to who should be the governing board, how it could be constituted. The council has never formally taken that question up. So if this council wants to discuss the issue, a governing board, then staff would have to put together a report on what we see as the various options you could address for a governing board, bring that to you, and you could select one if you chose to, and then that would be your governing board.
Bruce, have you been
drawings? I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So if you institute that now, the governing board is going to inherit the drawings. We can't go get 60%, 90% drawings, institute a governing board to say, oh, by the way, we're going to go a different direction. Now, that would be a waste of money. So the question of proper governing of the library is important, the operation of it, everything. So you can superimpose the new governing board in this process, but it's got to be with the proviso that plans as approved, stay approved. We can't just be running all over the place. So
Can I ask a question? Bruce, you've been involved representing the city in the creation of these plans. Am I correct? And the plans have come before the city council more than once for input and public input.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
So we approve it now to move forward and get this going?
Yes. Okay. Can I make a comment?
Yeah.
City staff, city manager, librarian, apparently the people in the audience are in favor of this. I make a motion that we approve as read.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Sorry.
Comments?
I oppose.
Can I make a comment before I vote?
I think we already went through the discussion period. You want to have a discussion period after the vote?
Well, no, then I vote aye. But I'm just trying to come up to speed here. I hear what you're saying. I'm trying to understand.
So are they. Let's get this going.
Well, I think it is a consideration for new council members to try to get up to speed, and I think it's also on the other council members to help other council members get up to speed.
Okay.
So to disregard their need, I think is inappropriate.
Chronologically, he wants some history apparently. Chronologically, this contract was approved six to 9 months ago?
6, 9, yeah.
Okay. And there was progress on 30% drawings. They essentially were sent back to be redrawn. Took a little time, but here they are. So the issue at hand on this agenda item is whether we're going to approve those 30% drawings and move forward. Okay. I'll submit to everyone, if we continue to delay, you will miss the 2019 building code codes and be looking at 2020 and much greater costs regarding this project. So now the item here is that we just voted on is to approve the 30% drawings after revisions approved by the librarian, contract librarian, had
subcontractor, independent,
had very strong reservations regarding the initial. There was an extended initial 30% drawing period. There was some give and take back and forth, and it was finally decided to go back and redo them significantly. Right. And this is the result.
Okay.
And my personal opinion is that I don't feel this is a rush job, because I'd be more than happy to move this to the 2020 timeframe, because I'm all about net zero building. I think that would be an exciting project for the city. And I don't think that the fact that we're pretending it's a rush and that we should try to meet the 2019 deadline is actually not really benefiting us, because a net zero building for our community is an exciting project that we could shoot for, and we'd have much more time to come up with a very exciting job, get more public participation, which we have excluded the public for the majority of this process. There were snippets where we allowed.
Okay, this is where I need some clarification on what the zero.
We've had a lot of public input, and I was here for most of it. And they had other meetings. I'm tired of talking about it. We've talked and talked and talked. I want to move forward with the way it's written here, and I made a motion. I think we had a second, and we had a vote.
It's 4-1.
It's already, the vote's already done. We're adding on to a conversation only because we didn't have discussion once the motion was made. That's an opportunity for discussion. We went straight to vote. If you want to know what net zero means, that means that your energy consumption and your energy production in this building is equal. So you're not a consumer of energy. You are actually producing energy, and the energy you're producing is what you're consuming.
Solar.
The designs of today, they produce buildings that have ability to power multiple buildings.
Can we use a windmill at this to power this?
Excuse me?
Should we put a windmill in here to power
We're getting, if I may,
inappropriate.
We're getting way off the agenda. If I could have the council's attention, we're getting way off the agenda item here. We
What,
were
the
to
30%
approve
drawings?
30% drawings, not to reopen the discussion what the library ought to be. Now, if the council's so inclined that it wants to have that discussion, it should direct staff to put it back on the agenda for discussion purposes.
Thank you, Bruce.
Okay, that can be handled at the
I'm good.
future agenda items.
Thank you.
All right, the next item of business is the Roseburg East Wildfire Mitigation Project. That's a report by Matt Mello.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So before you tonight is a resolution to approve the Roseburg East Wildfire Mitigation Project and the CEQA exemption. So as you know, in 2017-18, we approached the City Council for a budget adjustment of approximately $8,000 to clear 29 acres of city-owned property to reduce the fire risk on the easements at the Roseburg properties and at the wastewater treatment plant for the infrastructure. So the method is the shaded fuel break, it's called, which removes the flammable understory. It is burned, thinning of the trees, of the smaller trees, and leaving the bigger trees that are more fire tolerant. So we want to continue the work on the property, on the Roseburg property. Excuse me, I'm not quite sure what it's called anymore. The landing, the Converse Park, or it's the old mill site to me. It's on the south end of town. We want to reduce the fire risk there. I have secured some funds from the CAL FIRE Siskiyou unit. It's called carbon credit money. It allowed work to continue on that. There's we're one of the top three fire mitigation projects that received this particular money. There's only $30,000. Right now we're up to about $5,000 already used out of that money, and that's for crew time, the inmate crew time. Approximately 7 acres we have cleared as of today. So everybody knows the Roseburg property, excuse me if that's the wrong term we're using, or the landing property, is on the south end of town on the east side of the boulevard. It borders state and federal lands and some private lands. This does tie into a fuel break, the Mountain Thin. There's a new fuel break that's going to be in effect from the federal government, excuse me, of the 89 project, I believe it's called. And then also there's a SRA, which is the state responsibility area, which runs along the old McLeod River Railroad. So all three of these fuel breaks will tie, all four of them actually will tie together. So again, we want to continue on with this. And fortunately, the money or the funds from the state are going to run out. We need a little bit more money to hopefully finish the 30 acres that remain up there, and it's an additional $10,000 to $15,000 that will hopefully complete the project. There's a few other things we may be applying for in the future, which will come back to council, but what we're going to do with this property is block it, it's called, and we're starting by Church Street. Again, if everybody will turn to their map, I don't know if you guys got the colored map or not. And you'll see where our project property is, where the federal government is, and then the SRA. Excuse me. So what we'll do is from Church Street and we're going south, that whole piece will be blocked out, and we'll continue working south as long as the money will take us. We have started in the thickest part of it, and we're going to the least. The part that was logged in, I believe, 92, 93. That's the way we're working. So if we can finish this one particular piece with the carbon credit money and a little bit more of our money and get that whole piece knocked out, we'll have a better chance of stopping a fire coming into town. And the big concern, especially for me, is a fire starting on the I-5 or 89 and coming into the city. And this will be a good fire break for us because it's surrounded by other fire breaks. So that is the reasoning behind this particular one. And it's city-owned property, so we do have a say that we can clear it. Again, tonight...
You mean thin it, you mean?
Thin it, yeah, we're not gonna clear it, I'm sorry. It is gonna be thinned, not clear cut. It's an understory vegetation removal. We thin the smaller trees, burn the piles, and then go in and do an understory burn when weather permits, April, May.
That the bigger trees survive.
Yes. So the bigger trees will stay, and the smaller ones, the saplings and things will come out. Anything typically under 12 inch will come out. And it's extremely thick. We've met with professional foresters Friday, I think it was, and they are concerned about it if a fire does start on especially the I-5.
You met with the Forest Service while they're on furlough?
No, the foresters from the state.
From the
Yeah.
state, okay,
Yeah,
state
sorry.
foresters. So
Yes.
what's the condition of the surrounding property, the SRA and the FRA? What shape are they in?
So if you can go to your map again, if you look at our project area and look at the green, this portion of the green area is federal land that has been all cleaned. The fire ladders has been taken out, everything 10 feet off the ground, bulldozed down and then disced. So it's in excellent condition for what we're gonna butt up against.
What about the control burn on the base, on the floor? That wasn't done?
This one here, there's nothing left. It was disced
Nothing
under.
left,
Yeah,
just under.
it was disced.
Okay.
So it's bare mineral soil. So everything south of that green area, which is in the SRA, to 80, that's gonna be the new 89 fuel break. So it'll be the same as what we're doing. It's a shaded fuel break. So they're gonna take a dozer in there, run it down, and then burn it off.
So they are yet to do that?
They haven't done it yet.
You know what their schedule is?
You know, my understanding was it was last spring, so I don't know. It hasn't
Top of the
happened.
list by now, right?
Yeah, so hopefully it's at the top of the list. It needs to be done sooner than later, definitely.
Just a question to help me when
Sure.
I drive by the project area. Does that extend behind the radio station? Is it going behind
Actually,
all of that, or?
that was private land that is owned by a business owner in town, and they actually took that upon themselves to clear that piece.
I got you.
So there's two different private landowners right there, and they're willing to clear their own land if we will help them just burn it. And that's just the fire assist from us.
I got you.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry.
Do you have more?
Yeah, there's a little bit
Go
more.
ahead, I'll finish. I'll
So,
talk later.
I am not an expert at CEQA by any means, so Juliana wrote this piece up.
Nobody is.
So, again, she did an exemption for this. There is a whole lot of exemptions, especially after last year, or yeah, I guess it would be last year. So the section for CEQA is the 1526.9, parentheses C, which is a short-term mitigation project. This falls under that criteria. So that's what this whole meeting is about tonight, that if the council signs the resolution, that gives us the opportunity to send the CEQA form in.
So we have evidence, I know to me it's logical that this is a dangerous forest. Because
Absolutely.
I saw it before you did your thinning, and then I saw after. And so I saw how it was like a forest wall. There really was no way to even walk through. It was so
Correct.
thick, right? So are we just using common sense to say this is obviously a
No.
How are we?
Great question. And what it is fuel modeling done from the state. It's in the very high fire danger zone, which means that the brush you can't walk through it. So it's just a fuel modeling census, I guess, is what it's called. That
So you define the area as a super high risk.
That's done
the state
from,
defines it
yep.
as a high fire risk zone just because of the density of the forest.
Correct. Yeah, it's not just a guesstimate and pulling it out, no. And then we also use fire history. Obviously, the last 5 years, I think we looked back and there was 10 different starts from Snowman's Hill down to the boulevard and Mott Road to the boulevard. So I-5 and 89, there's been 10 different fire starts. So either from vehicle fires, dragging chains, blown tires, or what have you, so.
saying you have a history of fires starting right around this 89 I-5 intersection area. And so that is record enough to show not only do you have a highly dense forest, but you also have a history of fires starting in the area.
Yeah, and weather modeling, and that falls into that critical fire weather stuff.
Weather modeling as
well. Yes, it all falls into that because we typically have south winds in the afternoon that come through that canyon.
I'll wait till after public comment.
Okay. Any other clarifying questions from Matt? Okay, now we're open for public comment. And would you please introduce yourself and say where you're from?
Hello, I'm Sarah Jewett. I'm from Mount Shasta. And I live kind of close to that area you call the Landing, or the old Roseburg mill site. I come from a mill family. We are from Oregon, and we cut all the redwoods, a lot of them down the, I'm not proud of that. That's like my opening to make you pay attention. Cut the redwoods. Basically, I'm concerned just about the biology, like the season that you're going to choose to do it in, so that like the birds aren't nesting during your harvest times, and also I assume you're going to deal with some of the brush, not just the saplings, but the madrone, not madrone. What's the other red one? Manzanita.
Yes.
So is that part of your policy, like having your harvest not be like during songbird season? Yeah, if I don't say it, somebody else is going to.
Yeah, so our burn plan that's in effect, it takes all of that into consideration. So your answer, yes, we are.
Spring is obviously the breeding season.
We have a very short burn window here, and it's April, May, depending on snowpack, especially in town. So we are concerned about that, but we do have smoke mitigation plans. That's why a burn plan is important. That's why we have it in place. So if there's a bird nesting there or what have you, we don't burn.
Yeah, even if it's not like endangered, it's just kind of general respect. The songbirds are pretty important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment for this item? So we'll close the public comment.
I'd just like to make, have we been getting much help from the federal government, from the state government, and our state and federal politicians who represent us? Have we talked to any of them about the need and the importance of fire protection in and around our home?
Yes, and that's what this carbon credit money is all about. And does that make sense?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I know, but I just want to see this town make an incredible push and be on record that we're asking for help, federal and state, because we're the next paradise.
Exactly.
No, take that back. Take that back.
No, I mean, it could happen here.
Don't manifest it.
No, I'm not manifesting it at all. I'm trying to, I want to put the word out there that we expect help.
Yeah.
And that's where I would like to see in California a lot of help from the federal government and also the state government, especially in Northern California, where I'll go on record and say we're neglected a lot. So I think as a city council and I think as a community, we have to make an effort to connect with our politicians.
I think.
Just remind them we're here.
Just remind them, absolutely, and strongly remind them. It's important.
I know that Bruce has taken the initiative to meet with the agencies and to set community priorities as far as the agency level.
I think that they've done a tremendous job so far, and I've been talking to them, and I'm really appreciative of what they've done. But we need to help too. We need to put the word out there that we have firefighters that, they need help. It's a big project. You're doing only what you can do. But there's things we can do as a city to push it even further. I mean, we have, I think, the best volunteer fire department in the state here, without exception. So I'm just going on record as a councilman that we as a council need to be strong and move forward with our communication with our elected officials in Sacramento and Washington. That this is an important issue for us.
Well, I think you will get, and are already getting good response from the state on a preliminary basis, so that they are moving in the right direction. Now, where the feds go may be quite another story. There seems to be a conflict there. But I think the more we get organized locally, the more we have a clear plan, we've identified the areas of concern, we have a plan to address those, the higher the probability that we will get assistance.
And I do want to go on record that in no way am I saying anything derogatory to our local staff. They're fabulous, and they deserve a lot of kudos for what they've done this year in response to some of the fires and their help with other communities.
I think as a council, there's one thing that we can agree on, is that we can encourage our citizens of our town to do the best they can to be prepared for a disaster, not scare them, but say, if you're prepared, if you've planned ahead and you know what to pack and you know how to deal with your animals and your grandma and your family members and your kids, if you know ahead of time, you've sat down and talked with them, when the actual incident comes, you're going to have a lot more self-confidence and you're going to make smarter decisions than if you're just going to wing it when it happens. So I think I agree with that 100%. I also think that we as citizens of Mount Shasta can do a lot in cleaning up our own environment, our own homesteads. Because I can drive around town and I can see areas where there's weeds in people's backyards this high. There is trees that need to be thinned. There is old rotted lumber all around their houses. I mean, we can pass something like that in town, and I think we have some things coming up that we're going to be able to address these problems. But it's something that, you know, we need to get on soon. We can't wait till next year or the year after. You know, we need to talk to our neighbors and say, hey, I can help you clean up your backyard, you know, if you can't do it. But I mean, that's all fuel. That's what happens. I think it starts with a conversation, you know, and I think we need to be brave and say in the nicest way possible that I'm concerned about the maintenance of your yard, and I'm here to help, and not, you know. I mean, how do you say it? How do you use the language so that you're saying, really, it's no, you know?
That's what I'm saying. You don't just jump on your stuff. But, you know, and then if they don't, there's going to be an ordinance around that's going to force them to clean up their debris if they don't go the other way. I mean, I want to protect our city. I want to protect your property and your lives. And if it takes me to raise my voice to somebody who has junk in their yard, you're damn right I'm going to.
Downtown businesses have that problem. There's just firemen stacked
we need to get
10
moving.
feet high. Just
This isn't something that we can be really nice and stuff. I mean, you can at first, but if they don't, then we need something in the books that says, well, you have to do it or you're going to get fined, and we'll clean it up and charge you. I know there's old people around, and we can have committees that can help them, and disabled people who can't do it, we can do that, you know. But I mean, we got to move.
Okay, the fire department and Catherine came up with these lovely brochures, and there are hundreds of them available. And it talks about defensible space. There's a diagram of what we'd like your home to look like. And these you could carry around and distribute them to people at any time. So you can have as many as you want. So there are many of these sitting around, so that could help. And I also wrote a letter for the newsletter. I wrote an article for the newsletter about disaster preparedness. So I think the more that you want to help the community become aware, repetition really helps. If you think a message is really important, write a letter to the editor, write an article for the newsletter, get involved and get your voice out there, not just at council meetings, because really there isn't much public here.
There's public who are watching this on television. Okay, I understand what you're saying, but I don't need to be lectured.
Okay. Well, then I need to watch how I'm speaking.
So we have a report before the council. It has a resolution attached to it, and we would request council action.
Move to approve CCR 19-60, a resolution to approve Roseburg East Wildfire Mitigation Project and certify CEQA exemption.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It passes.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Again, I don't believe we clarified on the budget adjustment, the mid-year budget adjustment for the 10 to 15,000. I believe Muriel would have to be directed for that, or do you want to wait till mid-year?
No, that's what we just approved. It's in the.
But that's not in the resolution, I don't believe, is it?
Isn't it?
Not everything.
This is just for the exemption. So it would be just a budget adjustment. Would we do it at mid-year? So that's what, I just wanted to clarify that it's not in that it would have to be a budget adjustment.
Is this just a direct staff versus a resolution?
Correct, I believe so, right?
No,
Given-
you're requesting.
Yeah, given that the mid-year budget is coming to you, the last meeting in February, you can either direct me to put it in now or whatever you'd like to do. I mean, what you've done is you've already approved the mitigation project and the CEQA exemption, and the budget should follow right in with that as well. So basically, you've already approved it.
Okay.
So
I just wanted to clarify.
But I will include it in the mid-year budget.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, the next item is council appointments to committees. There's a report by Bruce.
So we have openings on committees. The council members are appointed by the mayor with approval of the council itself. And we have openings on the RWAG committee, the Regional Water Action Group, and on the Budget Audit Committee. And so we're looking for appointments to two of those. And
I'm sorry, what committees? I'm sorry, what committees?
There's an audit ad hoc committee, which is we do every year because, there's an audit every year.
Yes.
And it's mandated that we have an audit ad hoc made up of two council members to monitor that process.
Right, so for the record, ad hoc, city councils have two types of committees. Ad hoc committees, which are a committee of the city council with no more than two of the seated members from the council. We have standing committees, which are larger, are basically our citizen type committees, and they are subject to the Brown Act, and they have multiple appointments that are for an extended period of time, or the ad hoc is a short-term single-purpose committee, and when your assignment is completed, the ad hoc dies, unlike standing. So this budget audit committee is an ad hoc committee, and we're looking for two council members to be appointed to that and to work with Muriel. And it is a requirement to have the committee.
And I was going to propose that in addition to being an ad hoc committee, that we add a budget element, because there are a number of reports coming forward to the council over the next few months. It's the schedule is in the back in the appendix of the protocols, and that it would be helpful, especially for the new members and for the public, to have the councils explain in more layman's terms what some of these budget proposals are coming forward, to get a big picture view. I thought that would be an additional thing that the ad hoc committee could do.
The ad hoc, if the council chooses to do it, then that ad hoc committee would work with Muriel and the auditor on the audit, and then on the budget process and budget issues. With Muriel, and that would come back to the council as a formal presentation.
Yeah. So my suggestions for that committee would be myself and John Stackfleth, and another option might be Jeffrey Collins. Those are the three I'm considering for the committee. Are any of you interested in being on?
I'll do it again.
Okay. So I would say, if it's okay with everyone, that John Stackleth and I be on the Audit Ad Hoc Committee, if you're okay with that? You're fine with that? Okay? You're okay? All right. So
Should we have a motion to that effect?
You want a motion?
Yes, so it can be ratified by the council.
Okay. Move to appoint the Mayor, Barbara Wagner, and Mayor Pro Tem John Stackleth on the Audit Ad Hoc Committee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. The RWAG, you mentioned the RWAG. It's currently staffed with, Juliana's on that committee, but now that she's also the mayor of Dunsmuir, she manages the meeting, but she doesn't vote because due to conflict of interest. Muriel, you're still on the committee as a city representative on that committee. So Mount Shasta wants a city representative on that committee. So Muriel is currently the representative. If she's absent, I'm there to vote on behalf of Mount Shasta. So I'm the backup for Muriel in case she's absent, but I've been attending anyway. I would recommend, if you're interested in RWAG, that you come to some Regional Water Action Group, which is submitting a proposal for grant funding to the IRWIN, Integrated Water Regional Management. So you remember a few years back, Jeffrey, you were on council when we got funding for all the meters, yes, the water meters. That was funded through Proposition 84, something like that, and through the similar organization, right? Through the same process. So we're in process. It's big in the sense that there are many organizations involved and represented. And if you're interested, I would recommend that you attend. If you already know that you're interested now, maybe we could assign you as another, what do you call that when they're alternate? An alternate.
I'll be an alternate.
Jeffrey Collins is interested in being an alternate. Anybody else? So let's assign Jeffrey Collins as an alternate. So move to appoint Jeffrey Collins as alternate for the Regional Water Action Group.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. You didn't want to be on it, Paul?
No, thanks. You got too many
We
other
had a request for you to be on it.
Oh.
Just so you know, you're so popular.
Too many other things right now. Thank you.
All right, and is that it for?
That will do it.
Just since we're on the subject, Team Shasta is also an interesting committee to be involved with. So keep that in your radar.
I would like to get involved with that.
You want to do that? Okay, cool. All right. So discussion and possible action setting a date for goal review workshop. Bruce.
So last year, we set a set of goals, worked out between the city manager and the city council. And most of those goals, if you refer back to manager's reports, you've seen we've accomplished most of those goals or made progress in those. So what I've done is put together a new set of goals. It's an expanded list of priority projects that for multiple years. And this is where it's throughout the departments where we need to focus our efforts, what we think are the most vital projects to the city. They are not the only projects, but they're set in this document because they are major projects. We still have our day-to-day activities, functions, and items that will come up from the public and from the council that could be added to this or will just be addressed as part of the daily staff work. This is the major emphasis, critical projects. The other reason for doing this is it allows us to prioritize projects. So we have the projects listed, we have the goal, we have the projects under the goal, and we have a time frame, a preliminary time frame. So what we envision here, as if this gets approved, as these projects go forward, these timeframes may change. We'll so note when they're actually accomplished so we can measure what we thought we were going to do, how we were going to perform and on a task-by-task basis, and how we in fact did perform. It allows for projects to be added, but it also allows you, when you look at adding a project, what project would you delete? How are you going to change your priorities then? So it gives an ongoing management review from the council in terms of what your priorities are, where our staff emphasis is going, and it gives us a tool to measure staff performance. And I think it truly just addresses the critical items this city needs to be working on. So rather than just throwing it on your agenda some night and say, hey, read all this and give me a vote, I think we found it helpful last year to do the workshop. And so I'm suggesting again, council pick a time, we'll meet in City Hall and we'll just go through it.
Okay, so I like Wednesday afternoons.
That always worked, that worked well the last time. Is that a conflict for other people?
Tell you Wednesdays.
Fine.
What time on Wednesday?
Well, you usually did it late in the
3:30.
afternoon.
Yeah, 3:30.
Is that okay?
John?
Is 3:30 on Wednesday work for everybody?
No.
What? No?
No, not for me. Thursday afternoons or Mondays. Monday, Tuesdays, or Thursday afternoons. And afternoons before noon. Are the only things that are really going to work for me.
Before noon?
Well, I'm sorry, just clarification. Is this a regular meeting or just a one-time meeting?
One time.
I'm sorry?
One time.
One time, then I can make a one-time meeting work, yes.
Okay.
My misunderstanding of it. Something regular. But if it's a one-time meeting on a Wednesday, I can make that work, yes.
3:30 is okay?
Yeah.
Paul?
I'm fine Wednesday afternoon.
Okay.
Did we have a date on that?
The first Wednesday is
Talking the 6th.
16th
First.
is this week, and then the 23rd, then the 30th.
So 23rd or 30th,
You don't want to do it this week's too soon?
too soon.
Okay.
30th. I like
I'm
the 30th.
fine that day.
No, never mind. That's the week before.
So January 30th, 3:30.
In City Hall.
City
A
Hall?
little conference room outside my office.
Okay.
Seems to work best.
And how soon before the meeting will you get us the material?
I'll get that out this week.
You're gonna get it out this week?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Wednesdays are when my place does sushi deliveries. Will I be allowed to bring some over to share with you?
Oh, my word.
John, I don't know if we can handle that.
I heard good things about that sushi.
Let's go.
All right, so we set a date. We can move on?
We can move on.
Okay, so item 13, it's a quarter to late. Item 13, there's no attendance, no reports because the report on Lola is going to be added in the package for next week. It didn't get in time for this meeting, but I did throw together a little report and it's in there. And then Jonah also forwarded a report, but you don't need that, do you? About all the assignments, the county assignments and stuff. Okay. So now we're on future agenda items.
I would like to put that on the future agenda.
Okay, but you have two. I'm liking A for this reason. If we extend the hookup fee reduction, it's equivalent to what's going on in the residential side. If we go to 0, which is more aggressive and I think would have benefits, we would then have to, I would think there would be a push to also change the residential rate to 0.
That's true.
And also aggressive, and I might tend to be in favor of doing both for 3 years, but I think at this point, to go with Plan A, which is a reduction of 75%, retroactive to January 1st.
I'm sorry, this is for suggesting an item for future agenda, not for deciding what you're going to do.
No, but that's what, but Paul's making it.
Please
Paul
stop
has
right
said
now.
his idea,
Well,
but there's
yeah,
two
I meant
ideas.
to open it up. I meant to put it on the agenda.
What do
First-
we say to get him on there?
I want to
No,
put it,
first
I
of
want
all-
to get it on the agenda.
First
So
of all,
what-
we're not on city council to represent a single individual or two individuals. We are representing an entire town of 3,500 people.
May I?
And
You know, Barbara,
and
I want to put it on the agenda because I think it's a really good idea to help get some businesses going in town. This is
And
not.
I'd
they
be
brought
speak
up
to
a-
that.
They
And-
brought up a,
As well.
may I finish, please?
Yes,
They
of
brought
course.
up a really good point. And what I feel I need to do on the agenda is not necessarily what you may agree to, but it's what I agree to, and I'm throwing it out there that I want it on the agenda.
But
All right, there's already two council members that said they'd like
Yes.
it on a future
Yeah.
agenda.
I understand he has two options. I want to discuss it to lower it.
So it's option A that he mentioned
Yeah,
before.
option A, to lower it, to generate possible more business in
So-
town.
So
Okay,
it would be to
first of
extend the
all-
residential reduction for hookup fees
Okay,
to
so
the businesses.
Hold on,
Let-
hold on.
Let me make a suggestion here.
Yes.
Let's put this on the agenda
This is a bigger,
as a discussion item
Right.
because it is complicated.
Yeah, it is it's very complicated.
And-
Don't make the assumption that we're going to vote on it. I want to open up discussion on it, is
Okay.
what I want to do.
So-
because it's very important for a council to make informed decisions, not just pull a decision out of their ass, okay? So, right, and so
Yes.
this attitude of having your decision already made before even reading the material is not the role of a citizen.
Everything he's been through,
Yeah.
I've already been through it. and
Right.
it's crap.
So I'm saying, if you listen to our Civic Sparks fellows, okay, we are sending 7 times as much water to our wastewater treatment plant in the wet season than the dry season. What does that mean? Is that we have an infrastructure that needs repair. And what does that mean? We need funds to repair that infrastructure. And where's those funds coming from?
Well, that's
I'm just saying
that's
that
the
there's,
discussion we're going to
there's
have.
a lot to learn, you know?
You know,
And
I
your-
really,
your
I'm
personal-
going to say something. I don't need to be lectured on what I just made the motion for. I want a discussion on it. We can discuss all of that stuff then. I don't want to sit here and be lectured about that right now.
Could the council give direction to staff of which agenda you want this on?
Next week, next agenda.
Next one.
Next
Next
so
one.
Be on the 28th of January meeting. So be it.
Okay, thank you.
And it's clear that we're interested. There were 2 proposals from the audience member. One had to do with reducing the hookup fee rate to the residential rate for businesses, right? That's
We will address the issue of fees, how they're administered, why they're administered the way they are, what the residential fees are, the different legal issues involved with the fees, then with the intent of the council being as informed as it possibly can about this, and then you get to make a decision.
Well, at that point, after that discussion, we wouldn't make a final decision. We'd be giving
No,
you
but
direction.
ultimately,
We'd be giving you direction as
Right.
to what to pursue. Okay.
Correct.
So this might take a good 2 to 3 council meetings to.
Okay.
Any other additions to the agenda? I noticed, did you want to hear more about the library expansion, or did you not? Did you want additional agenda on that?
Nope, not right now.
Okay.
I do have other things I would like to put on the
And
agenda.
Councilmember Collins, you or Councilmember Redden or any council member that ever wishes information on an item, you can always come see me.
Oh, yeah, you know I have.
I can even stop by, you know.
We need a major.
So is there
enhance
anything that you're
infrastructure
interested in
financial
adding at
district
this
to make
moment?
major improvements to infrastructure.
Marijuana.
We do need to have
Cannabis?
Cannabis.
businesses much bigger than
marijuana.
it is. But in the meantime,
Discussion on.
it's something.
For
We're-
the planning commission thing that goes on tomorrow?
We just want education. Just,
Yeah.
just a, hey, this is not a simple issue either. There's a lot of complexities
Isn't
to
that
it.
the same,
sure somebody can roll
you
one
can
up and
talk
teach
to any of us, right? I
That
mean-
part I know about.
I mean, Juliana is highly educated. She put an extensive article in the paper answering a lot of questions, detailed technical questions.
I've read every piece of it.
Okay.
I've got 600 more questions.
So, all right, well.
All right,
you can-
I'm
so-
just saying I don't know if
So
anybody else does. I'm just.
What
just one vote.
what I'm hearing here is a request from a council member, Councilmember Collins, that he needs more information on cannabis because cannabis is coming to you probably in March.
I'm just trying to make sure we're prepared.
Yes, so perhaps what this council needs is a position paper or a workshop
Yeah, just, exactly, just an
where you
educational
can
format. I'm open.
ask these questions. And so if, tell me what you want to do and when you want to do it, put it on the agenda.
It
Do you
sounds
want to have a
like we want-
workshop on it? Do you want to have do you want Julianne to prepare a paper about all these issues and how cannabis works and?
If I'm the only one who wants this, then forget it.
No, right.
No, I think it's a good idea
Well,
for you.
I'll second your putting it on the agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would it report by Juliana be sufficient? Or did you need more time than that? I mean, a
You just
report.
you want time to ask questions.
Yeah, I just want some time to ask questions. And Juliana is probably a really good one to,
Yeah.
She's the main one.
yeah, she's the main person who knows the regulations better than anybody that I know.
We had a meeting this afternoon, we being Julianne and myself, with a group of people that are opposed to this boundary reduction. Had a very positive meeting. She explained a lot of things in the law and how things are actually working that seem to be very beneficial for them. So I think having this type of conversation would be beneficial for the council.
Okay. Do we vote?
So we should, do
No,
you
it
want to
was
set
already-
a time?
It was already seconded. I
Right.
guess what
Why
you're
don't-
asking is,
why don't
would you like a workshop, which would probably be more like a 2-hour time slot? Or 1.5 hour, probably 2-hour Q&A? Or do you want a staff report, which would be more like sort of a half-hour type time slot?
My reaction would be do a workshop, because we're trying to give the council information. And if we do it in a position paper and on an agenda, you're gonna have a horde of people
Public
here, and the discussion is gonna go sideways on you. So why not hold a workshop?
Okay.
You're free to ask all the questions, you're getting information, then you're more prepared.
Well,
for
Juliana
the
was
public
trying to do
discussions.
a planning city council joint meeting, which sounds like that this could fall under. I mean,
She canceled that, didn't she?
but she canceled it because she couldn't get everybody, I don't know, there's time conflict, I thought. So you want to do a workshop? Do you want to do the Wednesday 3:30 again for a time slot, or what do you want to do? We have
Well,
to
let me
check.
talk to Juliana,
Okay.
see her schedule and everything.
Okay.
And I'll report back to council too. We'll use the manager memo form. I'll give some dates, you can respond directly to me. That's
Okay.
not a violation of the Brown Act, and we'll set the meeting.
Can you do the polling system where you can poll which date you can meet? Can you do that? Yeah, okay.
She can.
Yeah. All right.
One more?
You want another suggestion? Yeah?
I've been approached by a number of people to pick a day 2-4 months from now where Roseburg is open like we did way back in 2010, where there's 2 weeks for people to clear brush around their local areas, take it down to the Roseburg, the landing area, have a chipper on site for a weekend. They'll chip it all up, and because people are spending crazy amounts of money to take it to the landfill, which makes no sense. And we did it when we had that big storm in 2010, and I heard Paul, we need to push this on all levels, people's property, give them a way to bring stuff down there and have it chipped up, because there's lots and lots of brush if you're really going to do it right.
So you want to incentivize the private property owners in this town to clean up, and you would give them sort of a free pass.
Bring your stuff down to Roseburg, you got a 2-week window to bring it there, and they'll chip it up at the end of it.
Yeah, because at the dump, you can have 3 trucks look the same, and you'll get 3 different prices and what it costs to dump it there, which is why people won't do it.
So shall we ask the staff to come back with a proposal for incentivizing private property owners within city limits, right? Or are you including zip code? Start with city limits first? See how it goes?
Don't know.
People within city limits?
Yeah.
To find a place where they can, of course, there may be some legal issues, whether they have to sign.
That's why they got to tell us how to go do this.
Is there a waiver to sign? Is there a membership fee? How do we cover the cost?
Well, you're going to have to staff this. You're going to have to screen the materials being brought in. The last time the city did it, it ended up as somebody dumping a car block into the debris, and it got thrown in the chipper and destroyed the chipper. So we need to make sure that doesn't happen again.
So sad, so sad.
So, but all of this is, of course, doable. So, and it's getting these yards cleaned up is an important part of our overall safety program. It's something we'll be discussing with the nuisance ordinance. And we need to look at this not just as a single event, though a single event would be helpful. We need to look at in terms of long-term policy, how we're going to make this community safer. And we can write regulations, but if you don't give the people the means to address the problem, it's kind of meaningless.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I'm done.
We'll do a report and bring it back to you for your consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Thanks, Jeffrey, for your offerings. All right, and we're done? Adjourned, thanks.